All right, welcome. This is Orion Rising. I'm your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. Show this out, show this out, show this out. It is Friday night. Law of one. Let me turn off that overlay here. Having technical difficulties for whatever reason with me typing in the chat to go to Facebook, which I know is live there because I just started sharing it there. And the chat was saying all of a sudden that there was some sort of weird element that it wasn't. So I'm going to check. It is saying I'm live on Facebook, and so I'm going to check that. So share this out, guys. Welcome. Welcome. Share this out. Share this out. Yeah, it says I'm live on Facebook right now. So I'm going to refresh my screen over here on Facebook and make sure that it is, in fact, live. But for whatever reason, it's telling me that I can't type in the chat for over there, and I don't know if I see you guys. I saw Reese said hello, but I don't think I saw Rick. Let me go back over here and take a look to see if I can see that. Yeah, I can see you guys, but for some reason, when I first typed welcome and please share this out, that came through, but then it said an error had occurred. So wait a moment. So I'm going to try something again in the chat. Hello in the chat and see if it goes out there to both places. Yeah, it is now. So I don't know what was going on for whatever reason. There was an issue slightly for a second there. Okay, so I rewound the session. We ended, there was about 9 minutes left. Now there's like 14 minutes left. So I backed up about 2 questions just so that we can get back into it. And I didn't start it all the way completely over because the beginning is just a normal beginning that you could hear if you go back to last week, where he's saying what can she do to make herself more comfortable, and her workouts a routine, is that working and helping when aiding with her energy. And then the questions are starting here at this question, so that's where I'm going to start pick up at. And yeah, I don't know what's going on, but I'm having issues with for some reason, weird technical difficulties. My camera didn't come on. It's stuck in Zoom again. Weird, because it was stuck in Zoom for about a month, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. But then I did Zoom last Saturday, and it was again. Now it is again. But I did Zoom in between on there as well, and it was not stuck, and it was on while I was on Zoom and when I did my show last week on here. Then all of a sudden it got stuck over there. So for whatever reason, it gets stuck half the time when I do. It's a good thing I have another camera. It's just annoying. I'm hoping that I didn't check the audio. I'm hoping that the audio is the audio from the computer. I'm going to look right now and see which one it is. No, it's from the webcam, so it's got me. It's too far away. So hold on, I'm going to reset the audio and make sure we can still hear it. So hopefully that's louder now. When it's on the webcam, it's like 3 feet from me. I'm pointing at you right now, and it's about 3 feet away from me. So the microphone, I sound like I'm a long ways away, although it picks up well, but I sound like I'm a long ways away. So let me know that my sound is working better now than it was. Somebody say something in the chat. Rick, welcome. To let me know if you can hear me better now than you could about 10 seconds ago or 20 seconds ago. Hopefully you can hear me, and I'm not just talking and it's not working. So Rick said, yeah, okay. So, and Reese said, that's better. Thank you. I was in a hurry, running late, trying to get this all going, and was having technical difficulties, and was like, camera, and I plugged it in and forgot that when I do that, it'll default to the microphone and the video on the camera. Until I literally just looked up and I see that the microphone is on, and I went, uh-oh, I think I'm on that microphone, and that's why I checked it. So yeah, it has me too far away. If I'm going to do that, I should wear a lapel, but this microphone's better, right? So that one works if it's up real close. If I had it setting probably 2 feet from me, the sound would be fine, but it's another foot away. It's 3 feet away. The problem with this microphone is that you pick up the television more than you do on that one. So I'm either too far away and you got to turn up the sound and so you don't hear the television as prevalent, or I sit here and use the camera for out here and the microphone from the computer, but then you can hear the background bullshit going on, but I have to have the TV on. Okay. So Friday night, right? Welcome everybody. I see Denise is here. Penny's here as well. So say hello. Reese, I didn't say hi to you. I just said I saw you, but I didn't say hi. I said hi to everybody else. Didn't say hi to Reese. Hi. And if you're here, and I didn't say hi to you, it's because you didn't say hi to me, and I just see numbers, and I don't know what human being is or what being, because you could be from another planet or another species, and be on here watching and listening in, which I have that happen all the time, right? Talking on my cell phone. I can hear the effect when I start talking and the algorithm hits something, either the computer, so either a robot's listening in or a human is. And when I'm hearing somebody, it gets choppy. And as soon as I mute my microphone, it works just fine. And every time I do that, it stops being choppy. But then after me doing that and then unmuting to talk for a minute or so, all of a sudden their microphone is now picking up the conversation, which means somebody's actually tapping into my phone microphone to hear what's going on. And when I mute that, they can't hear me speaking. And then they go to the person I'm talking to and they start on them. And I've actually had them, I've said to them, when I'm talking, mute your microphone, and then I'll mute mine. And when we do that, then literally what happens is we end up getting disconnected because the algorithm then can't pick up. They only get half of the conversation. And both of us are aware of it and muting our microphones so that it doesn't pick up what we say, or only what we say, but not what the other person says back to us. That's why this thing is doing what it's doing here. That doesn't sound, it sounds like a conspiracy theory. Honestly, if I were to personally text you, and we started talking about something that had to do with spirituality or conspiracy theories, literally what would happen, the only time this ever happens is when people are texting my phone and I'm texting them. All of a sudden, their text will come through twice, or my text will come through to them twice when I text, which means they're being carbon copied to somebody, but it's also being carbon copied back to myself. And I love that, because that only happens when it doesn't happen if I'm talking about TNA, cars, normal stuff that no one cares about, religion, things like that. Doesn't happen. The second I change the narrative and start talking either about the deep state or about serious spirituality and the things that have been removed from the world, that is the only time that it happens. So you can say it's a coincidence if you're afraid, because that's what most people will do. Cassie, welcome. Most people will say coincidence when they're afraid. Oh, that's just coincidence. There is no definitive proof. You know what I mean? So if you want definitive proof and you're in the Law of One chat or the Returning to the Old Ways chat, you should go in there and see what Cassie forwarded, which was, what's his name? Why do I always draw a blank on his name? I can't think of his Russell Brand on his YouTube podcast that he posted on YouTube, that he talks about the coordinated effort and shows you the actual people behind the scenes, the companies that are in charge of all media, including television media, news media, magazine media, and the internet, and who controls all of that. It shows the same thing. We had made a video probably about 6 years ago now, and it was about the same thing, that showed that all of these networks were all literally saying the same words off a script. And it wasn't like all the channels were Fox or all the channels were CNN or all were ABC or all were NBC. It was every single news outlet. The ones that pretend that they don't hate each other, like CNN and Fox, saying the exact same things. And we got in trouble and got deleted for it, of course. And we were trying to tell the world about it. Russell Brand just did the same thing. And his producers did it on COVID and showed you. And it literally showed you who the people that are donating all the money, bringing the news agencies, paying for them to be on the air. And they show you that. So even if you don't want to watch the whole 25 minutes, you'll be hooked if you watch the first 5 or 10 minutes. 10 minutes into that, it's only 25 minutes and a few seconds long. 10 minutes in, you will be hooked and you'll be scared to death if you didn't know this stuff. So you should take a look at that. I also posted it on my personal Facebook page. You guys should take a look at that, because he's telling the truth that we've known for a very long time. And every time we try to tell about it to the world, they try to delete us and stop us and stifle us from actually telling you what's actually going on and showing you, not just saying it. I can say it to you and you can go, you're a conspiracy theorist and you made it up and you're crap and you're full of shit and you're lying. But this is actual, he puts up like 25 or 30 news agencies from around the world, all speaking the exact same script, and they sync it up, and you can look and see what the channels are: Fox, CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS, PBS. What is the one over there in the UK? The big one in the UK, the big one in Australia. You guys know what I'm talking about. They're all on there, and they're all saying the exact same things, which means that they're controlled by a narrative behind the scenes by somebody with money. And you should look into that. You should watch that video to figure that out. Right. So sorry, I'm starting to read what people are saying in the chat. So I'm trying to figure out what you guys are talking about. So, okay. So let's get into Law of One today and go from there. But like I said, share this out, please. Get it out to the world. It's 2024. Happy New Year's. This is the first show of 2024 for Orion Rising, and the first Law of One class for 2024. So welcome to 2024. This is going to be a completely different energy. If you haven't noticed that in the last 30 days, and now we're going into a new moon. Well, we're almost in a new moon. We got another few days. By the 12th, we'll be in a new moon, because the full moon was on. It was on Christmas, wasn't it? No, I don't remember. It was either Christmas or New Year's. If it was New Year's, we're halfway to the full. We're waning to the new moon. If it was New Year's, if it was Christmas, we're in that. If it was New Year's, we have another week. Either way, well, the first full moon of 2024 will be in, I believe it's a week and 2 weeks or something like that. But I didn't look it up. Normally I have looked at that on my calendar before I talk about it, but I was far too busy in the last couple of days to do this. A lot of stuff going on in the world right now that have to do with the politics of the time. I'm not going to get involved in all that right now, but a lot of stuff that you should be paying attention to that's going on that just happened, and weird things sometimes people make conspiracy theories out of something that's nothing. Literally, I just watched I don't know if it was on TikTok or Twitter or where it was, but it was, there was that shooting from that kid, that young boy who killed himself, where he went to a school of little kids, and he shot some kids in there, like 5 kids, the principal and a bunch of kids, and one girl that I'm aware of who was in 6th grade was killed. And right afterwards, the one reporter that was there, I don't know what agency he was from, somebody else was videoing it and saw it, and then they ended up getting his video as well. And he was talking to the cops and being very rude and saying, "Why aren't you going to tell us what's going on? And people were shot and you're not telling us," and just really cutting into him. By the time I saw that, I saw that at midnight last night or so. Or 10 or 11 o'clock at night last night. But that happened right after it had happened. However, I had already seen, like an hour after that had happened, they had a total a press release and told everything that had happened, including that the kid had shot himself. But they didn't talk about whether or not he had a suicide note or a manifesto. And so I could see why that guy may have been saying some of that. Because they have done that whenever it doesn't fit their narrative, they don't let you know, and you don't get to read why the person, if they left a note why they were doing it, unless the agenda says this place is racist and sexist, and then they put it all over the air. So I don't know about that because I haven't looked into that. However, it was like instantaneous. The guy was on them saying, "You're a conspiracy theory and you're covering this up. People have died." And they put that all over the internet. And by the time it went viral on the internet, my point of this is that, lies and conspiracy theories travel halfway around the world before the truth even gets out, because I didn't see that until like 10 hours, 12 hours after I actually already knew what had actually happened. So the police at that moment, there were minors, children under the age that were involved, and there is no way that the police are going to give any details to anyone until they notify the parents of these children, because legally, if they say anything, the parents can sue the city, the county, and the state that happened in for giving out information that without their permission about the well-being of their child. That's a law everywhere in the United States of America. I don't know what it's like in your country. So the police cannot and will not give you any information on a crime scene that is happening or just happened, especially 100% of the time when a minor is involved, either being the shooter, which was the case in this point, or whether or not minors were shot at or took place in a school or somewhere where minors were present. None of that information can be told to you until the parents say it's okay to let the world know about it. If the parents say, I don't want the world to know my child's name, the police will exclude that child's name and say, another child died, but we do not have the permission to give you that information. That's being withheld by the family because of personal reasons. So they didn't even say that to this guy, but they don't have to. So he was like going crazy on these guys. And that just gives everybody a bad name who's actually trying to report on things, including the fringe, us on the fringe, that would maybe say that and go, why are you guys keeping this information back? That guy's a journalist. He's a reporter. He should know the law. I know the law, and I'm not a journalist or a reporter. I'm just some schmo. But I'm aware enough to realize that's the way it is. If I have a picture and it has minors in the picture and I don't have permission from that child's parent, I cannot publish that child's likeness on the air. It has to be something that is licensable, which means that it is by consent. I've done that. There's a couple of my reels for Christmas that have all children with Santa Claus. I have permission to post their photos on the air with Santa Claus. They gave permission to do that. Okay. Otherwise, I could get sued by those parents for not having permission. So they had to sign a disclosure to allow that information to be out there, the likeness of that child to be on the internet. Okay. I know that, and I'm not a reporter. That guy should have known that. So it was just kind of crazy, that video. And I hate that because they do it all the time. TikTok is most places, but TikTok has a lot, but everywhere else too, because all the videos that people post, they do like I do. They post the same video on every platform. They're doing things that I know because I've studied this stuff that are completely fake. Like, for instance, there's a video out there on TikTok and Instagram and the rest of the world, and it's just old photos of people from the 1800s here in the United States, apparently holding aliens in their hand. I have seen all of those photos in my lifetime prior to that video, and none of those people were holding anything besides children. And a couple of them were holding midgets because they were part of carnival, and they were holding a midget like it was a baby, and the midget had a beard and a mustache. Okay. So it was like a 35-year-old man, and this man was holding him like it was his child. They superimposed fake aliens over them and with an app, and then they put it on TikTok to make you believe that this was just readily available, and people were all over the world having aliens, and there's pictures of it, and they don't even say it. They just show you these pictures, and I look at them. I used to do this for a living. I used to authenticate pictures of people and aliens. I did it as a profession, okay, for a very long time. And I worked for governments for a very long time. That's why I started Ancient Aliens Worldwide, the group, which was the first Ancient Aliens named group on any platform. I had permission from Prometheus, from Giorgio Tsoukalos, from all those guys at History Channel. I had permission to put that out there. Now just everybody can just make it. But at the beginning, back in 2012, you had to have permission to do that, okay? I did that because we were a think tank and they knew who I was. I'm friends with all those people. They're in that group. And literally that's what we did in that group. But I was doing it already before that for 10, 15, probably 20 years before that. Probably going back to the early 90s, okay? And I was already doing that as a hobby prior to that because I was always chasing aliens. Now, I say that because I can see that stuff instantly, and I have a really good memory. I was probably Long John Silver, and his name wasn't Long John Silver because he had a big schlong. It was because he had a good memory. You should look that up too. But everybody wants to make it believe that, it was the big penis. But I see that stuff instantly and go, that's fake. That's fake. I can see it instantly, especially if I've already seen the photo because of whatever, somewhere along the line, somebody had a photo, or I happen to be searching online for that type of photo to authenticate somebody who was the artist or the photographer, because I used to work for a framing company where we framed archival stuff and just anything that you guys wanted to frame. And people would come in with things and they would say, this is worth $1 million. I would have to verify that because we would have to insure it. If it was in our possession and we were framing it and something happened to it, we're liable, and we had to have insurance. So I had to authenticate everything that walked in the door. And some people would have things that were faked and they thought they were real, and I would have to break the news to them and they would get mad at me, and then they would try to sue us claiming we stole their original and put in a fake to give back to them because we had some scheme going on where we were stealing things and giving counterfeits out. Well, if we were doing that, I wouldn't tell you about it. I would just let you have it back and you'd never know it until you found out. Right? So literally that I had to go through that. So when I look at things, sometimes I see them and I go, that's totally fake. And everybody's going, oh my God, this is real. The reason I tell you that is because they do the same thing with information out there in the world. People they watch a movie and it becomes a religion. Okay. The Matrix movie, people now are saying we're in this Matrix, but when they say that, they believe we're in a pod somewhere with stuff jacked into the back of our skull in some goo, and a robot is using us to get energy. That story is true in a small sense. It is actually true. We're not in a pod that's goo, and we are in a prison, but it's not a third dimensional prison by somebody who is a third dimensional army that is controlling us. Okay. Now, is there, energy vampires that live on and in this planet? Yeah, there's an entire couple species of them that actually get energy off of that. But humans do too. You guys just don't know it. I've taught this for more than 35 years. You, me, everyone else have the ability to suck other people's energy out of them, take their aura and put it into our own energy. That is a vampire. That is where vampirism came from. Okay. So we have that ability. Humans do it. People who are in service to self are aware of that. And I've taught this because it happens. Someone will show up in a place and suck everybody's energy, and people will be like, oh my God, I don't know what happened. But when that one guy was here, he left and all of us were just almost in pain. And all of our energy we felt drained and wore out because he was a vampire and he sucked all of your aura, all of your energy off of your aura. You have no aura and you have to replenish it now. And people are like, is that a thing? You're making that up. No, I'm not. Okay. So there are people who live off of that, but there's people who know that when you're in a fear state, you also have, you'll see how this is going to tie into Raw as we get going. When you're in a fear state, by the bombardment of everything that's in this matrix, quote unquote, the news, everything on the internet that is bombarding you with things that make you afraid, that are in some way like the pictures I talked about. All of a sudden you're like, wait a minute. So there was aliens that people got pictures of it from the 1800s? That's going to freak people out if they don't know that there is actually aliens and that it goes beyond that into your soul. Okay. People are so 3D locked into 3D, they don't realize that 68% of the souls on this planet did not start on this planet. And that scares people. First of all, no one knows that because people think, first of all, I have an immortal soul, like it's a possession. I have a pair of glasses that I almost dropped on the floor. I have a pair of glasses. Okay. I'm not a pair of glasses, but I have a pair of glasses, reading glasses, that I put on to see better at a distance. Okay. I own them. You do not have an immortal soul. You are an immortal soul. Okay. You don't possess it because you are it. Possessing something means that you have something that's external that you control and you have. Your soul, your spirit is not external that you are controlling, because it's you. You are controlling it, but it's you. That would be like me saying, I am these glasses. I'm not. But in a weird sense, I am. That's a discussion for another day. Okay. right? And you guys are talking about that in the chat, right? Cassie's saying exactly 100% my energy. Let me put my glasses on so I can read it right. It's so sensitive that I can't do it, but Leo can. So we made an agreement for him to keep me informed. Yeah, right. Oh, you guys are talking about that. Yeah, no, that's part of what I do. People like freak out about how much I pay attention to what's going on in 3D in the politic, the religion of evil, in that entire arena, and that some people just cannot do it and don't want to have any part of it. Most of the people that are in our circle in this coalition can't do it. There's only really two of us that can. Peter Coyle and myself. We're like the dogs on the ground sniffing the bushes, right? We literally, that's what we do, and it does not affect us at all. It's part of the skill package that he and I brought to this planet. Okay, there's other people out there that have this ability too, millions, billions, right? Don't get me wrong. But in our group, we don't require in the coalition everyone to know this stuff. It's stuff that you don't want to have everybody know. If you've ever been in military and in combat in your entire life, you understand what I'm talking about. You come back to the world, wherever you live in the world, you come back to the world and you look around at the children that are there and they have no idea. None. They think they do because they watch television and crap like that. They think they have an idea of what's going on. They do not. And if you've never been in combat, you cannot talk about combat. You can't, because you've never been there. You have no idea what it's like. You have no idea. Everybody goes, oh, if I were there, I would be this hero, and I would just be Audie Murphy. And that's, most of you are far too young to understand that name. And I would just do this and this. And the truth is, until someone's trying to kill you and someone's lobbing bombs and missiles and shooting at you, you have no idea how you're going to react. None. Everybody has, what was it that Mike Tyson said? Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Okay. That's the truth of it. I remember my brother when we were going to the MMA fight club before it was called MMA when we were kids. And he got in the ring with some guy and he knew he was a badass and he was going to kick this guy's butt. The guy punched him in the nose so hard it almost broke my brother's nose. And my brother, it hurt so bad that when the fight was over, which he lost, he said, I'm never doing that again unless I have to fight for my life. That guy hit me so hard in my nose, I couldn't see straight, and I was teared up the whole rest of the time. It hurt, and I couldn't even concentrate. This fighting thing is not for me. There's nothing wrong with that. I didn't even give him a hard time. I was like, yeah, it's not. It hurts. And he was like, oh, my God, my nose still hurts, bro. I can barely see straight. And we were like, I don't know, 11, 12 years old at the time. Okay. And he was like, I'm done. And I was like, I'm with you. I'll do this if we have to. But we continued learning martial arts for the rest of our lives, right? We don't probably practice now as much as we should, but we continued learning that stuff anyways, but we weren't in competition getting beat up. That's why I don't have cauliflower ears. Okay, so the reason I tell you this is because like Cassie was saying, some of us are in the trenches and can watch this stuff and not be affected by it. I don't get stressed out. I don't get angry. I don't get freak out about it, but everybody assumes that that's the way I'm going to get. And they assume that's the way I am. I've had friends get mad at me and call me all kinds of names because I was their enemy because I said something that triggered them in that religion that they are unaware that they're a part of because they've been indoctrinated into it. And it's not their fault. But they'd get mad at me and be, not be my friend. My ex-wife say the same thing to me. Some of you know that. She did it in public. And that was because she got triggered about something and she decided that I was the problem and everything had to be taken out on me. And I've had people do that. And if you've ever had people nowadays and during COVID, you know what I'm talking about. But you just shed that off. It's part of what happens. And I just go, okay, some of these people say they're really awake and yet they're pointing fingers at everybody and that one and that one and that one. And they're this. And when you're locked into that and you feel it necessary to point things out like that, they're the problem. They're the problem. That one's a problem. Liar, blasphemer. When you're in that mode, you're not awake like you think you are. Okay, you're not, because otherwise you have no reason to do that. Because if you are actually as awake as you think you are, you're going to look at those people. You're going to know that what you're saying is true. Okay, truthfully, you're probably 100% right in what you're saying. Not always, because a lot of times ego tries to say everybody else has ego. However, you know who these people are, and you have no need to say anything about them, to them, or to anyone else, because this is exactly where they're supposed to be in their development at that moment. And that's the way this ecosystem works. They are 100% necessary, just like you are, for the development of the all, which editors hate. When I say the all or the all, they hate it. They want to drop the off and put all, or change it to everyone. And I'm like, do not do that. Do not do that. It means something completely different. And if you don't get it, because you obviously don't, or you wouldn't be trying to edit it, okay, just do what I tell you to do. You work for me. I don't work for you. Just because you think that the message should be that way. And that's the same thing, is my point. That's the same thing as people doing that. They get into this place where they're stuck, and they think their ego is telling them they know far more than they know. The truth is that if you actually do know things, you know that the more you know, the more you realize that you don't know anything. Okay, because there's far more to know than the little pittance that you do know. That's true knowledge, and that's true awakeness, is to look at things and go, okay, everybody is exactly where they're supposed to be. There is no war between God and the devil. There is no war between good and evil. There are only choices. There is no right and wrong. There are only choices. Okay? There are bad things that people do to other people. Absolutely. Those are wrong. But they made a choice to do that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't punish people. Look what's happening around the world, because no one's punishing people. And now they're getting organized. Right? We just had over here in the United States, I forgot what, it was in Compton. So I think it was down there in Southern California. And literally somebody took a car, a Kia, and backed into the door of they're calling it a bakery, but it looks like it was a bakery plus a convenience store. And 100 people went in and just basically stole everything, including the scale that was in there. They stole the entire place. They left hardly anything behind. And obviously no one's going to be prosecuted for it. The guy said they're already up to more than $75,000 worth of damages. And that's not even including the front door and the security gate that was bashed in. Okay, so no one's doing anything about that. That's why. The guy that, I don't know if you heard about it on the news over here in the United States, some guy stabbed 2 girls in a restaurant or cafe inside of an airport. That guy was released out onto the streets and tried to kill somebody and got arrested for attempted murder a day and a half later, because they didn't prosecute him for attempted murder when he said all white people need to die and started stabbing people. They let him out on the streets, and he did it again and got arrested. And now I'm waiting, because that was 3 days ago. I'm waiting for him to be back out on the streets and do it again, because nobody is prosecuting. They're just like, oh, you're okay. Tried to murder people. This time he tried to, the time before that, which is crazy, right? No, I'm sorry. Now I'm confusing that with the guy who jumped over the desk and attacked the judge who was going to put him in jail. He had already attempted murder on people with a baseball bat. That was just the last thing that he was in there for. And then he had attempted to stab somebody and got in the court for her. And she was like, look, you're obviously not getting it and you're not reforming, so I think I need to put you in jail. And then he tried to kill her. And the bailiff who defended her had to have stitches and had a couple of broken bones before they could subdue this guy who was claiming, I'm a peaceful man and I'm not doing anything, until she was like, yeah, well, we're going to put you in jail. Then he tried to murder her. He should have been in jail like 4 or 5 crimes ago. The guy had been arrested 25 times prior for assault. And if this was 5 years ago, he would have already been put in jail for attempted murder 4 of those 25 times. And then he tried to kill a judge. So now he's being brought up on felony charges because, it's all of a sudden he was going after the elite. Before that, it was just people out on the streets. They don't care about that.
So that's why the only reason that some of this is starting to change is because everybody's attacking Walmart and Target and all these big corporations, and they're closing their stores and losing billions of dollars. So now there's people starting to squawk about it. Same thing with all the problem with the border. No one cared about that when it was all in the Republican states, right? And then all of a sudden, when the Republicans started shipping them all to the Democrat states, now it's a big issue, and everybody's going fucking crazy over it, right? So it takes that kind of stuff to happen. I tell you all of this to get back on point. What we're going to be talking about is a continuation of the karma, law of attraction, and the choices that you have to make to ascend and what you gain from that. This is what the topic was in the last session, is in this session. So everything that I just went and talked about for the last 40 minutes is not irrelevant. And if I've already triggered you and you've run away, it's because you don't realize that you're a follower, a practitioner of the religion of evil. If I've triggered you and you think that I'm your enemy, that I'm the opposing party or the opposing religion that you follow, then you're nowhere near as awake as you think you are. And you're actually a chronicler of that religion of evil. You don't know it, but you are. You should be wearing their toga. You should be wearing their toga and be preaching their religion, because that's what you're doing. And if you're getting triggered by anything that I've said and you've already left, you don't know what I'm saying now because you're already gone. Those of you that are still listening and still here around the world, it's because you're either going, okay, I'm going to give this guy a chance, but you're already triggered. It's not your fault. They're programmed, all of us, to get triggered. Some of us or that's our job, is to watch and see that stuff, because the only way that you can defeat your enemy, know thy enemy as you know yourself. I have to be paying attention to what they're doing, and people like Cassie don't want to get involved in that, even though she found that Russell Brand video and gave it to me and watched it. I think she watched it, Russell Brand is also doing the same thing. He is 100% aware and trying to show the world this is what's actually going on. They control everything, and they have forever. It's just that this new era that we're moving into is not allowing them to completely stifle all of our voices anymore. They used to have control over that. There's too many of us now that are opposing. They can't, because it goes so viral so fast, which is my point of that other video, that it weird, even though it sounds like conspiracy theories and nobody wants to listen. The good part about that is that all of us that are throwing out these, what you would call conspiracy theories, there's so many people talking and there's so much noise going on that you also are not trusting their version of the conspiracy theories, which you guys don't realize is a plan by us. We are flooding the market with just as much information as they are, and they claim that 100% everything we're saying is a lie, and we claim that 100% of everything they're saying is a lie. Your job is to be able to have the choice and the mind to question for yourself and make up your own mind. You didn't have that 20 years ago. You did not have that 10 years ago. You did not have that 5 years ago. You are just now realizing it. And you're like, I don't understand why they're just blatantly lying to us in our faces. When did they start doing that? They started doing that about 128,000 years ago. You're just aware of it now because we have restored the ability for you and the balance for you to be able to see both sides of the coin, both narratives, and make up your own mind. We can't tell you what to believe. We can only make you think. We're aware of that. So what we're doing is we're going, this is what they're saying. I'm saying this. You decide. We have to do that because they're not doing that. They're going, this is the truth. Those guys are liars. Okay, so that makes us have to say this is the truth, those guys are liars. Because if we just say this, they go, he's lying, she's lying, and you go, they're lying, because they're not even defending themselves. Okay, so we're not, but what we're also telling you is they're lying. So you guys have to figure that out on your own. And when you do, you get mad because you realize that people take advantage of you, and that hurts your ego. And then you get mad and you're like, they've been doing this the whole time and everybody's lying to me. I'm not going to listen to anyone. And people are like, no, you have to, because if you don't, no. If you don't listen to anyone at all, it does actually change a lot of things, because then you're not bombarded by all of this controlling mechanism. And then you start seeing things for yourself and asking yourself questions. So this is what we do know. Okay. Raw is going to talk about that when I start Raw. This is why I'm saying a lot today about this. Okay. And you'll see as I go what I'm talking about. So literally, we're aware of that, and we have to put the balance there so that you have the ability to have the choice. That's what we've done. That's all we're doing. That's all we have to do. I don't have to convince you. I don't have to convince you of anything at all. All I have to do is allow you to hear both sides of it. So what we do is we say they're lying, they say they're lying, and now you guys are like, I don't want to hear either one of you. Good, because that means you're only going to be asking questions that you want to ask, and you're going to stop listening to them. That's all we care about. We don't care if you listen to the words that I'm telling you, whether or not if you think I'm telling the truth or not. I don't care about that. What I care about is, but I do care if you do believe what I say and agree with me. I do appreciate that. Don't get me wrong. We're not unappreciative, but we are aware that you're bombarded so much with so much disinformation that you don't know who to believe. And that is a good thing, because before it was just what they were telling you and everybody believed it. You don't remember that. Okay, you don't, but some of us do. If you go back in time, if you're old enough to remember that, go back to your childhood. There was no dissension. Everybody was exactly the way they are now, telling the same narrative on every channel. Okay, and if you think about it, you know that it's true. If you were paying attention at all when you were a kid, if you're old enough. Okay, so now the truth is the playing field, even though they own 90% of everything, the playing field, because of the internet, and that's driving them freaking crazy. They're trying to get control of that because they didn't expect it to work the way it's working. Okay. They didn't. They expected that they would have total control over it and everyone, just like they did before with radio and with magazines and with newspapers, and then with television and all of that. And then the internet. They've always had status quo, 100% control. Until they didn't. And they don't understand it themselves. They're too old. Most of them that are doing this, that's why most of you, if you guys know anything, that's why most of them are turning it over to their children now. Because the children are going, Dad, Mom, you guys don't know what's happening to you. And they're like, oh, we know everything. We've planned this. It's all part of our scheme. And their kids are like, no, you think you know, but you don't have any idea what's actually happening. The fact that they didn't even know what a website was back in the 90s and into the 2000s, they were like, what's a .com? What's this thing, the internet? And I was already working for governments setting up information highways on this internet. And people were like, could you explain? Could the producers tell us what the .com means? Not kidding you. The people that are in charge of the governments today are so old, they don't know any of this stuff, because they've always had other people doing shit for them. So they have no idea how any of this works. That's why everybody's just catching up to, wait a minute, TikTok's not under our control? That's somebody else? Hold on, we're going to ban it everywhere in our country, right? So what is TikTok doing that Google's not? Nothing. They're doing the exact same thing. The difference is Google is 75% owned by that corporation that owns 75% of everything. TikTok is not. So that means they don't have access to what Google's doing. They have that access, but they don't have the same access to what TikTok is doing, because a different faction is doing the same thing. So then it's, we can't have our kids on TikTok. We got to get them back on Instagram and YouTube and Snapchat and these other places that are American or European owned companies, because they control it. That's all that is. That is all that is. TikTok is not doing something that Google is and Amazon and all these other places are not. They're doing the exact same thing. Stealing your information, watching you, everything you say, everything you type, everything you look up, all of that. And they're selling that information off to advertisers to target you. They're selling it off to scientists who are looking into ways of targeting you to make you even more locked in to these algorithms. And that's what they're doing too. They're just doing it for their own people, not for the Europeans that are in charge of believe they own the world. Okay. So it's in above that, some would say China and the corporations that own both are the same people, which they probably are. Again, it's red, blue, or whatever faction that you have, progressive and conservative in your world. Those are fake. Those are made up to give you a team to fight against somebody for, so that you don't know what's going on truly in the world. Okay. So your job is to see through all of that storm, ignore that chaos that is that storm, that is that huge dynamic hurricane that is swirling around you. And you're supposed to stand in your center point, which will become the eye of the hurricane. And when you're in the eye of the hurricane, it's completely calm and there is no storm there. If you've ever seen any storm chasers or any people that fly weather planes, when you get to that eye, it is a void where there is nothing going on. And you're in there and it's completely warm, 85 degrees, no wind, no rain, nothing, no turbulence, nothing. That is the 0 point that we are trying to reestablish for you so that you can go to that place of calm. And that is when that happens, all of their control goes away from you and you start thinking for yourself. They don't want that. That's all we have to achieve. I don't have to tell you and convince you of the truth. All I have to do is get you thinking about it on your own. So if I get you and we all get you to where you're like, I don't want to listen to anybody, I'm done with this. Then every time we go, woohoo, victory. Another one is about to start waking up, because if you're not bombarded by us and them, you're not bombarded by anyone or anything, you're going to then stop and you're going to go, whew, this is kind of cool. And then your third eye will start opening and you will clear, your mind will clear, because you're not being bombarded by them because you're ignoring them. And once that happens, you then start going, and you start seeing this hurricane flying around you and you're like, has it always been like this? And we're here to go, yeah, no, it is. That's the way it's supposed to be. Really? Yeah. You ever see the yin and the yang? You know, those two little spots that are opposite colors? Yeah, that's actually the Vesica Pisces in that center point. When you blend those two in there, that center point is the 0 point in the Taurus where it's calm. That's where you're supposed to get to. That's when we call that being centered and upright. That means you're in that 0 point, which starts from your heart. When you're in that 0 point, you look around at all of this, and that's when in the Matrix, when Neo all of a sudden stopped and looked around and saw nothing but ones and zeros and zeros and ones. Although that's not what you saw on your screen. They changed that from binary code to a Japanese menu, sushi menu. So in truth, what you were seeing was a sushi menu going down and up the screen the whole time. You can look into that. You can look that up. You weren't actually seeing binary code ones and zeros because they were afraid to show you that. They had, in the beginning, it was supposed to be that way. The guy who wrote it was supposed to be ones and zeros, binary code. But if you started looking into binary code, it is a language. It's DOS. It is a language that runs the computers, and some of us actually know it. That's why Peter Coyle, if he's here, he usually starts typing binary code in the chat. And it means stuff if you look it up, right? I haven't been reading the chat, so I apologize, right? What is that? Agneta? I don't even know how to say that, right? I'm saying that wrong, obviously. And you have an umlaut over your O, so you're probably from somewhere in South America or Europe because you have a Latin name. So you're either Latin or Viking because they're very similar, but not, right? So hi, by the way. So literally this, I'm going to start now. I know I've been almost an hour, but you'll get the why as we start going forward. That's why I rewound to where I did with Ross. I'm going to do a sound check and then we'll start on that So you guys know that I'm not here just like going crazy, right? Cassie says, Leo, where are we with Raw? So Cassie's producing me and going, okay, you've spent too much time. That's funny that popped up on the screen right when I was going, we got to get on to Raw. But you'll understand why I was saying what I was saying as we go right here in the very beginning, because we're talking about the ascension and the 0 point and the balance. And I had to show you that contrast of all of this craziness that's going on, because otherwise I would have had to stop right then and do it anyway. So either way, you were going to get this information out of me, right? Rick's like, leave Leo alone, right? Well, some people get impatient. That's just the way they are. And some people, do that. That's just, it's okay. I was in my head producing myself. Cassie was not wrong. She was not wrong in saying, where are we with Raw, dude? Right? If she was here live, she would have stepped in. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm literally went on for almost an hour. Okay, but you'll understand why. So Rick, don't go after her for saying that, because she was proper and right. And I was actually in my head doing the same exact thing, weirdly. And that when I looked down, it popped up on my screen. That's hilarious. Okay, so let's do a sound check for Raw. Let me know if you guys can hear it okay, and then we'll go on from here.
34.2 questioner, thank you very much. We'll start general questioning now. You stated at an earlier time that penetration of the 8th level or intelligent infinity level allows a mind/body/spirit complex to be harvested if it wishes at any time/space during the cycle. When this penetration of the 8th level occurs, what does the entity who penetrates this experience? Can you tell me this? Ra, I am Ra. The experience of each entity is unique in perception of intelligent infinity. Perceptions range from a limitless joy to a strong dedication to service to others while in the incarnated state. The entity which reaches intelligent infinity most often will perceive this experience as one of unspeakable profundity. However, it is not usual for the entity to immediately desire the cessation of the incarnation. Rather, the desire to communicate or use this experience to aid others is extremely strong. 34.3 questioner, is it possible for you to tell me what I experienced? Around 1964, I believe it was, when in meditation I became aware of what I would consider to be a different density and different planet, and seemed to experience moving onto that planet. Is it possible for you to tell me what experience that was? Ra, I am Ra. We see some harm in full disclosure due to infringement. We content ourselves with suggesting that this entity, which is not readily able to subject itself to the process of hypnotic regression instigated by others, nevertheless, has had its opportunities for understanding of its beingness.
Sorry, I don't know if that person was spam. The person was spamming. And I didn't link on it, but I blocked them. I don't know who that person is, but yeah, they're. I didn't click the link either, so I don't know what that link was. For those of you listening on the MP3 podcast, while Raw was talking, I looked down in the chat and somebody was tagging everybody in the chat with a link, which I did not click on, and I would suggest you guys don't. And I blocked whoever that was. So that person is no longer in our chat. And it doesn't come in here, so I don't know if the person was kicked out of but it was a troll, right? Right, we've had two. I didn't see the other one. So was the other one happening? Where's the other one? I'll have to go back and look. I apologize for not noticing that you guys had another troll that was in here, if that's the second one. So I didn't see the other one because I didn't have my glasses on. I just happened to be looking down to see your guys' comments about Raw, and I saw that one, right? So if the other one pops back up, I'll take care of that. Just let me know. I'll try to manage the chat and find out, right? So I didn't know there was another one. I just saw that one spamming and went, click, out of here. So if there was another one and whoever that is comes back, and let me know, and I'll get rid of that one too. Okay, so let's continue with what you see here. Raw's talking about or Dawn is asking about the ascension, and he's talking about the 8th dimension now, and Raw is sort of having a hard time. You'll see that with whether he's talking about the 8th dimension in the 3rd dimension or the 8th dimension that is the density. So when people say here, well, we're going into 4D, 5D, 6D, 7D, 12D, all of that they're referring to, they think means in a higher dimensional plane of existence. And the truth is it doesn't. It just means a higher understanding, a level of understanding that is a layer in this 3rd dimensional octave. Okay. So that's always drove me crazy. And I've always tried to tell people about that. I talk about that in my book, which hopefully will come out at some point. Right? They've had the book. I'm going to contact them now that we're going into the second week soon. We're in the first week of January. They've now by today, they've now had my book. The editors were supposedly editing my book that for some reason they didn't do anything with. And it's been 4 months. Right. I believe they were waiting for me to make a full payment, all of the money, before they gave me anything to edit it, but they didn't tell me that. So that's kind of annoying, right? Because I made payments instead of paying it all up front because it was like $2,000 to have it edited. So I didn't want to just give them $2,000 like all at once. So I was like, oh, no, I'll pay you so I paid like $465 or $450 some odd dollars every month, whatever that adds up to get there. And that should be done. I'm going to see if they take money out of my account tomorrow or the next day, because they shouldn't be doing that. And now they should be working on it. So I'm going to contact my publisher about probably next week, probably Monday, and go, okay, so now what's going on? Why have I not heard? Because if you guys are not, if somebody got to you and you can't publish this, you will refund all of the money or I will sue you. And then I'll sue them anyways for the time that it's now kept me from publishing the book. So we'll see what happens there. I get annoyed when people don't do things. I'm one of those people. When I was working as a manager or a company, I was one of the guys that would tell people, look, if I bid a quote and you tell me you can get it done in 60 days, and in 60 days you're nowhere near done, I'm going to tell you that you either lied to me, or that you're incompetent, or that you need to get this thing done, and you need to give me another timeline that's a couple of weeks out, or I'm going to fire you, and I'm going to get somebody else to do this job, and then I'm going to tell everybody in the industry not to hire you because you lie about everything and that you're incompetent, and you're useless, and you're a loser. Don't tell me, don't give me something. When I was teaching and went to management schools and motivational speakers, literally I was in Disneyland. So the guy used Disneyland for an example. You guys don't know this, but this is what everyone does that's successful. Okay. You go to Disneyland or any ride and you walk up and there's a sign that says 45-minute wait from this point. You go, oh man, it's going to take 45 minutes from here. And then when you finally get to the ride, you're going to find another one that's going to say 40 minutes or 35 minutes from this point. And you're going to look at your watch and go, wow, we got here in only 20 minutes. Okay, that's called under promise and over deliver. It's an actual thing. They do it to you on purpose. They lie to you and tell you you're going to be here for an hour, and then you're going to get there in 35 or 40 minutes, and you're not going to be angry. But if they tell you that you're going to be there in 35 or 40 minutes, and it takes 45 minutes instead of 40 minutes, you're going to be pissed. But if they tell you it's going to be an hour, and they hope it's going to be about 35, and it turns out to be for anything under an hour, everyone's going to be happy because it didn't take as long as they were told. On the other side of that coin, don't promise something and tell me it's going to be at this time if you know it's not going to be. Lie to me and tell me it's going to be 2 months and get it done in 1. Because that way I'm expecting it to be 2 months and it's going to get done in 1. So if you bid something, this is going back to Raw now, we're talking about the ascension. Everyone thinks we're going into 4D and 5D and the entire universe is just going to transform. And it is going to happen in a sense, but not like you think. That's like everybody saying that there's this thing called the rapture, and that like literally 25 or 30 or 50 or 75% of the population is just going to be here to talk to me. I'd be talking and all of a sudden, boom, gone. And you're like, what just happened? Right? They even did that in the movie with what was that movie? The Avengers Endgame. Literally, like a quarter of the population winked out of existence, and they had to go back in time and change the timeline. That's actually kind of happening, and that movie was very brilliant. But it's not on a way that you think it is. It's not in a physical way that you think it is. But it is happening. It's happening right now, right in front of you. You just aren't aware of it. They call those things the Mandela effect. And they try to tell you that it's just you being confused, right? So this is what we're talking about here, right? Like pizza delivery, Rick. Yeah, they'll tell you it'll be here in an hour. And if it gets there in an hour and 10 minutes, you're pissed off about it. But if they tell you it'll be here in an hour and you're thinking, shit, it's going to take an hour, Okay, everybody, get used to the idea that we're not going to eat for an hour, and they show up 15 minutes early, you're happy, right? That's called under promise, over deliver. Okay, that's taught in business to be that way with everything. So my point of that is, in the spiritual world, it's the same. So people are thinking we're going to be in 12D physically, and we're going to be this higher being by the next month, by tomorrow, by a week from now, by 6 months from now. And nothing here is going to ever change. This is the way it's supposed to be. You as an individual are going to change and become more spiritual and less controlled by this place. And here's how I'm pulling it back around, right, guys? This is what Ra is going to talk about. So literally what we're doing is we're doing that with reality in a spiritual way that you're completely unaware of, but it's changing the mindset of everyone on the planet. And it's shifting things back into an even more even keel that's allowing you to be able to make your own mind up about things, which is the way things are supposed to be on every planet, everywhere. There's supposed to be some battle back and forth a little bit, but it's supposed to be equal. And it's not. It's way off and way askew. And that's what Ra is actually warning about from the beginning and telling you about the modus operandi, the MO of the Orion Crusaders. And you know them as the Anunnaki if you don't know them as the Orion Crusaders. You know them as the Cabal, the Deep State, the Illuminati, whatever they call it in your neck of the woods. It's the same ideology of the religion of evil. All right, let's continue.
34.4 questioner. Thank you. Would you define karma? Ra. I am Ra. Our understanding of karma is that which may be called inertia. Those actions which are put into motion will continue using the ways of balancing until such time as the controlling or higher principle which you may liken unto your breaking or stopping is invoked. This stoppage of the inertia of action may be called forgiveness. These two concepts are inseparable. 34.5 questioner. If an entity develops what is called a karma in an incarnation, is there then programming that sometimes occurs so that he will experience catalyst that will enable him to get to a point of forgiveness, thereby alleviating the karma? Ra. I am Ra. This is, in general, correct. However, both self and any involved other self may, at any time through the process of understanding, acceptance, and forgiveness, ameliorate these patterns. This is true at any point in an incarnative pattern. Thus one who has set in motion an action may forgive itself and never again make that error. This also breaks or stops what you call karma. 34.6 questioner. Thank you. Can you give me examples of catalytic action to produce learning under each of the following headings from the last session we had?
Okay, so we're going to get into that, but I wanted to stop right there. One, thank you, Cassie, for saying that. I put it up on the screen for those of you who are new. I'll say it because there's a whole group of you out there in the world that are not watching the video chat. So I'll read it. Cassie said, if you're new to this class / show, Leonard O'Neill does this every Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, USA time. That's GMT minus, I think 7 now or 8 now. It's a little off because GMT doesn't change and we do over here, which is insane. Right. So if you'd like to join our chat group, please message Cassie or someone else who happens to be in here. And if you're out there in the world, we do have a chat group, 2 chat groups, but one for the Law of One, a class chat on Messenger. You don't have to be on Facebook, but obviously Meta owns that. We don't have it up on other platforms just because it would just be too much if we didn't consolidate with that everywhere. So we put it in Messenger. So a lot of you are on Snapchat and TikTok and Twitter. And we have that. We share this stuff there, but we don't have the chat there. So if you guys want to be part of the conversation, get a hold of Cassie in here or myself if you're listening on the MP3 file podcast. You don't have access to the chat here. And if you don't want to go on Facebook or don't have that access, look for for us under my name or Cassie or the Law of One chat class chat in Messenger, and we'll add you to that. There's another one that's huge that's got hundreds of thousands of people in it, and that's a fan group. There's nothing wrong with it, and they talk about the Law of One and everything that's going on, and I'm in that as well, but I don't run that one. And that one gets kind of crazy and there's too many people and they fight and nobody's really moderating it properly, but there's nothing wrong with that. But we have a smaller chat group that is from this class that we talk about the things that we talk about in here in the chat on the show and other things that we don't talk about in here on the show or in the class. We have full-blown conversations in there and just let it organically happen the way that it does. But it's a lot more information. And if you have any questions, you can always ask them in there if you do not have access to the chat while we're live. And that's why we put that up. Okay, so again, here now, Roz is talking about, and Dawn's asking about this and sort of archetypes now from the last session. So if you don't know what he's talking about, you'd have to go back and listen to the last two shows that I've done, the last two classes that I did where we covered that session. And then you'll kind of get into what's going on from there, right? So can karma, I know Denise is yelling at me because I'm not paying attention again. That's hilarious. I hope my wording is right, but can karma be in a person's mind for it to come back and bite them when, well, yeah, everything that you think, that's part of what we're trying to teach. It's a good question, Denise. She's asking if what's in your mind, can that affect your karma? Yes, everything. That's why we're trying to change the mindset. What you think and how you think about yourself and about the world becomes your reality. So if you think negative thoughts about yourself, then that reinforces that negative information and how you see yourself. That will then change you and your personality to become more like that negative thought. And then you'll start voicing negative things outwardly. And you'll start doing negative things because you're saying to yourself. That's why we tell people never say anything negative about yourself. But that doesn't mean that you're being arrogant and that you're being egoic, because that becomes an extreme. When it does, that means you're listening to your ego, and your ego is like, I am the greatest in the world. I am the most knowledgeable. I know everything, and everyone else doesn't know anything. And just ask me, and I'll tell you. And everybody just needs to listen to me. If you start talking like that or thinking like that, then you are the problem. Do you see? This is what I was referring to, and this is actually rolling right back around to the beginning of what we were talking about, and way on point. So it was a great question, Denise, because it's right on point as to what Ra's talking about here and explaining. So if you have negative thoughts, you have to stifle that, because your ego is going to try and get a hold of you, and your thinking mind only does what it's told. So it doesn't know, it's not sentient. So your thinking is influenced by your ego, and your ego is not really sentient either. It's part of your subconscious. Okay, so it is you, but you're aware of it on a higher plane, that the ego is there to help you learn without the ego. And so it either is blowing up your ego and making you think you're the best in the world, or on the other hand, to get your attention. If you don't listen to that and you've gotten that part under control, I know I'm not the greatest in the world. I know I'm not the most awake. I know I'm not the most knowledgeable. Your ego will then change on you and start giving you everything negative and fearful that it can give you, because it wants your attention. It's designed to have your attention in any way that it can, whatever it needs to do to get your attention. And so usually the two easiest things is, you're the greatest in the world, and I'm, you just become full of yourself, and because then you're in service to self, and the ego will just keep inflating, and you're listening to the ego, and you believe you are the ego. You think you're the thinking mind. Or it's going to play into the narrative that they're putting out there to you to diminish you, and that's fear. So when your ego starts telling you the same shit you're hearing from the internet and from the news, you need to stop listening to those voices in your head as well. And that's actually just you. And so people, when they hear that, the ego and the conscience, sometimes they get confused, and they think that they're different personalities. And they start associating them with personalities and giving them names. And that's where a lot of times when people have schizophrenia, they have multiple personalities. One is always evil and one is always not. And it can take on a personality because you give it a personality. And that's just the ego accepting that and becoming that for you. So the ego then becomes this personality that you are giving it permission to be. And then it just starts to telling you that it's real. And then you start thinking that there's many of you inside. And then the ego will just continue with that. It'll split it into as many as that it can to get your attention. And then if it can, that was the whole purpose of the movie Fight Club, where you didn't realize until the end of the movie. And if you've never seen Fight Club, I'm about to ruin it. So mute me for about the next minute and a half if you've never seen Fight Club. So literally that was what he came to the realization of, was that Tyler Durden was him. It was all of what he wished he could be. It was his ego. And his ego took on the personification of a person. And that was who he wished he could be, but didn't have the guts and the strength to be. And so it became his alter ego, and then it would take over. And he didn't realize that when that happened, he was shutting out the memory because he was desperate to keep the memory of both personalities. So when he became Tyler Durden, he didn't remember it. He blocked that out when he went back to being, I forget what his name was. I remember Tyler Durden, but I forgot what Ed Norton's name was in his character. So literally, it took him to realize, and it took a long time for him to evolve to realize I'm Tyler Durden. But it took external factors to get him to believe that. And then when he realized the entire thing was in his head, it was just his ego becoming that persona. And so it became a split personality. And then he had to figuratively murder that personality to merge them back into one. And that's when he tried to, shoot himself, and it went out through his neck, but it killed Tyler Durden. Because he went through that. And you don't always have to go through trying to murder yourself to kill the person, but that's how the writer did it in the movie. Okay, so literally that is so everything negative, to get back on point, and then you'll hear Ross saying it basically when he starts going down the thing, you'll see the correlation that every negative thought in your head becomes you. Everything you think is what you start living as. So if you have negative thoughts, that was what The Secret was. That's what they called it back in the 90s. There was this entire video, movies that would teach you this in this way that they were teaching called The Secret. And they were literally teaching you to deprogram yourself and to get out of the negative routine and get all the negative shit out of your mind and replace it with positive shit. And this is what we've continued to teach you. And when that came out, I've talked about this many times. My brother and I were sitting together watching it, and he looked at me and said, "Do you realize this is what our father was teaching us our whole lives?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know, right?" Well, so not everybody knows this. And that's what we realized because we were young. When it came out, we were only in our 20s going into our 30s. We weren't even in our 30s yet. Or maybe we're in our early 30s. I was born in 67. He was born in 69. So by 81, I was, 23 or 24, right? Or 22, 23. So 24. So literally, we realized our father was already telling us this about these things where you have to stop being negative on yourself. Don't beat yourself up over anything. If you do something wrong, my father would never beat you and yell at you because you spilt your milk. He would go, oh, look out, let's clean it up. We're all right, just clean it up. He never would go, God damn it, what's your problem? And start beating on you because you knocked your glass over. That wasn't who my father was. He was the opposite, and he would react in a completely positive way. So that instilled that into us. And then he explained to us as we were getting older why we acted that way. Not saying that all of us took on those traits, right? Because some of us didn't. My brother had problems with it. He's always been fighting with that even till today. He had issues with not being, I was always very positive and never hauled off and beat somebody or whack somebody. But one of my sisters out of the four, two of them were the same way. So everybody's an individual person. And now all of them, as they've gotten older, are still working on that. My brother has worked on that throughout his life, but it took his wife, to her credit, to help him when he was younger to get out of that mindset of being angry and cursing at somebody for doing something wrong and having a little bit more heavy hand, because my father had that side of him as well. And he got that from his father, who was an alcoholic. And when he got drunk, he'd beat everybody up. He was not a nice man. I never met him. But that affected everybody that was the next generation, all of the sons and daughters of, my aunts and uncles, or my aunt and uncles. And then trickled down to our generation. And my father was trying to show us that he was a product of that environment, and he was trying to change his ways. And it took him a long time to do so. Some of us picked up those wrong traits in this generation and have now been trying to fix that and trying not to pass it on to their kids. That's stopping that cycle that happens in our life. So in your own mind, let me go all full circle now. In your own mind, you should always, always pay attention to what you're thinking about yourself. If people around you are telling you you're stupid, you're useless, you're worthless, you need to get rid of those people. Or you need to tell them, you know what, stop, shut up, I'm not listening to you, and I'm not going to have you talk like that. You need to set those boundaries. You have to do it with yourself first as well. Okay. You always have to do that, but you have to also be aware that once you do that, the ego is going to try in another way. So you have to become aware of that. The first step in avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence. It's been a long time since I said that, right? I used to say it like 10 times a day, and it's been months now since October. I think was the last time I said that, maybe even September, right? But that's the truth. So you have to be aware that anything that is negative that is being bombarded onto you should not be. And you need to not let it happen. If you're doing it to yourself, you need to stop it in yourself. So karma, which is what Ra is going to talk about and is talking about. So karma is what we make. Karma is designed. It's the law of attraction. It's designed by us. So what we put out to the universe, I suck and I'm no good. That's what you're going to get back. So that's what you're going to start thinking is going to create that reality around you. That's why people who do listen to their ego and get control of it and go, I'm the greatest singer in the world, and I'm going to stay this way and not let people control me, and I'm going to be a great singer. They become a great singer. And they'll tell you their success. This is why the ego is essential. Their success is because of their ego, but they didn't become the ego. Do you see? And they realized, but they used it to their advantage to do something. And a lot of the people are doing it to help people, even though they're movie stars and actors or whatever. And some people go, oh, they're just like everybody else in Hollywood or whatever. It's not true. Not all of them are just evil people. A lot of them are actually trying to make a difference, but they're doing it within a group of people that own 75 to 80% of everything. And in the industries, they tried to own it 100%. Evil people have tried to own it 100%. So that makes it hard because those people have to pretend that they are evil like them, but not get themselves in a precarious position and to be leveraged, and yet still try to get stuff out there to the world to help people by putting up with stuff. And that's what I'm referring to when I say we're giving you the option of being in the eye of the storm and having that calm and being able to see what's going on around you and operate within the eye of the storm. They're trying to keep you in the storm so you're so overwhelmed with all the negative that you just do what they tell you to do. You have to deal with the storm that is this place, that is this reality. The best place to deal with it is in that calm place in the center. And that's where we're trying to get everybody to get back to that. You don't have to believe anything I say. You don't have to believe anything anyone says. In fact, that we would rather you think that everyone is lying to you always. Because if you think that, you're not going to trust anybody and you're going to question everything and make your own mind up. You're going to start thinking for yourself. That will only ever lead you down the right path. Even if you're listening to your negative ego, you're going to find that out eventually because it's going to wreck you on the rocks, and you're going to go, well, I thought I was. No, obviously you weren't in that zone, right? In that Goldilocks zone. So you have to realize that. So it was a great question because it is very on point. So the long answer to that becomes the short answer. Yes, you create that within you in your own head. Other people are going to try and bombard you with it. But if you start believing what they say, it'll become true. That's the way it is in all reality in this place. So the more you believe that I am okay, everything is okay, and I'm not affected by this is why, going all the way back to the beginning, not everybody needs to be paying attention to the religion of evil like I do and like Peter Coyle does. You guys don't need to have to do that. Some of us will do it for you. You don't need to go into combat and get shot at and get blown up and get killed. There are people that will do that for you so that you don't have to ever do that. I'm one of those people that I will do that so that you don't have to do that. But you have to trust us when we say you don't want to know this anyways. All right. What we're trying to do is keep you from being tainted by all of this so that you can stand in that place and see it all and focus on it when you want to only, not because you have to or because it's all around you. They want it to be all around you. This is what Raw's talking about here. So let's continue, okay? But I hope that helped you. I didn't see if you answered because I've been talking without my glasses. So I hope that did help, but Raw's going to continue with that. So you'll get more of that kind of information as we go here.
Can you give me an example of the self-unmanifested producing learning catalyst? Ra, I am Ra. We observed your interest in the catalyst of pain. This experience is most common among your entities. The pain may be of the physical complex. More often it is of the mental and emotional complex. In some few cases, the pain is spiritual in complex nature. This creates a potential for learning. The lessons to be learned vary. Almost always these lessons include patience, tolerance, and the ability for the light touch. Very often the catalyst for emotional pain, whether it be the death of the physical complex of one other self which is loved or some other seeming loss, will simply result in the opposite, in a bitterness, an impatience, a souring. This is catalyst which has gone awry. In these cases, then, there will be additional catalyst provided to offer the unmanifested self further opportunities for discovering the self as all-sufficient creator containing all that there is and full of joy. 34.7 Questioner.
Right. So here, literally, Raw is saying that using the example of loss, say, of a person dying around you, somebody that you know, care about, love around you. And if you take that death the wrong way and what it's trying to teach you, if you take it in the negative way, you can become bitter and angry and go, I hate God, and why would God do this? And then all of your information that you're saying now is negative, even to yourself, about the world, about reality, about God, about how the system works, and all of this stuff. And it's all a lie. And I don't want anything to do with it. And I don't want anything to do with religion and politics and all of this. Why would there is no God? Because if there was a God, he wouldn't do this to me and wouldn't have this person die. You didn't learn what it is that you were supposed to learn from that, because everything is supposed to be a positive to help you to ascend. But if you choose not to see the positive, then it has to become a negative, because it has to be one or the other, unless you're completely indifferent and you didn't care. If you're in service to self, someone dies around you and you're going to go, dumbass, whatever, move on. Don't care. Talk to the hand. Don't care that my dad died. Didn't like him anyway. Whatever. Move on. Unless you were just bitter because your dad was evil, and then you're like, don't care, he was evil, needed to die. That's a little different, right? But you'll know the difference of where you have to learn yourself and notice the difference of where you are in your mindset. And that's the first step in avoiding the trap, is you have to actually realize that there is one. You're in a trap, but it's not a 3D prison where you're in some goo and there's robots sucking your energy. There are people sucking your energy. Yeah, because they get energy from that. Torture, rape, pillage, those things, control. That is the way that evil gets energy. They ascend on the evil side by doing those things to innocent people that are not in service to self. They also get off on doing it to each other. And that's where you have people that are in that world of sexual domination, where they tie each other up and beat each other and torture each other, and guys will choke a girl with his penis, and she loves it and wants him to do it even if she's puking up her food. I know that's kind of hard for you guys, some of you to take, but they do that because they also get energy from being the victim, from being controlled and allowing somebody to have control over them. And you'll see that same person who does that and dominates one person will turn around and have somebody dominate them. If you're into dominatrix, or if you've ever studied it, that's part of, that is the religion and the way of the dark side, the way of people that are in service to self. You just aren't aware of it, because the first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. They don't tell you about it unless you're part of it. So the best trick the devil ever pulled was to make you believe that there was no religion of evil, that Satanism is the religion of evil, and that is not it at all. That's a facade, and it's fake. And it's made to look like your religion, only the opposite. So you believe that it's the Antichrist. All of that was invented so that you would think that there's this devil who is the Antichrist, anti to your God. And that's what they want you to believe. They want you to follow that. And they want you to believe that that is real and be afraid of it. So you're focused on that. And you're not seeing what's actually happening, what their true religion is. You're not seeing it. That's just like everybody believes that there's something going on in Area 51 in Nevada. There's nothing going on in Area 51 that's in Nevada. Is there still military bases under the ground and there's shit going on down there? Yeah, but nothing like you think. Everything has been moved, and it was moved by 1950. 1951, it was all on Wright-Patterson Air Base, which is now called Wright-Patterson Joint Military Complex. And it's been moved from there because people like me know about it. Okay, so they have it everywhere now, but they used to have it out there in Nevada. They used to have it in in Groom Lake in the different bases that are there. Absolutely. That was where it started. But quickly, when everybody got onto that because of Roswell, New Mexico, and them knowing about that, if you research this, which I've done for decades, if you research that and you ask everybody that was in the military and the CIA, they'll tell you everything went to Wright-Patterson Air Base. Okay, so the true place was Wright-Patterson, not Area 51. Area 51 does have stuff going on there. Don't get me wrong. There are experiments. There are all kinds of shit going on. There is reverse engineering, but everything that you think is there is actually somewhere else. And they've compartmentalized that stuff so much to where every military base has a little piece of it. You're just unaware of it. You hear guys like Emery Smith talk and, and other people like that who are in those programs, they'll tell you that it's all over. It's not just in one place. It's not in Groom Lake, but they want you to believe that. So you keep focusing on that place. And that's where everybody's attention is. Everybody's standing outside the gates of Area 51 out in the Nevada desert trying to see something. And there's nothing to see but tumbleweed because nothing's above ground. And everybody's trying to spy on that place. And so because while you're there, misinformation, misdirection, while you're there, it's going on everywhere else. And no one's even looking there. And it's right in front of your face. That is exactly the modus operandi in every way. So the religion's going on right in front of your face. You just don't see it because you're occupied by the separation of church and state, because the church is one thing and state is completely something else, right? That is the controlling of your pineal gland, which is keeping you in the storm, not in the eye of the storm where you're supposed to be standing. And that's keeping the storm so in front of your face that you can't see anything because you're in a whiteout of just the storm and your whole entire psyche's out of balance and you're in the air and you're swirling around and you can't make heads or tails of anything. That's where they want all of you to be constantly. Your ego tries to pull you there too. As long as it can, it will do that to get your attention. So when you are not in control of your thoughts, you're going to say a bunch of negative shit about yourself, which is whoever abused you in your life, your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle, your brother, your sister, your cousin, whoever yelled at you and said, you're useless, you're worthless, you're nothing, you're a child, you're shut up, sit down, all that negative shit that they were mean to you. Those people in your life are evil, whether you love them or not. Doesn't change the fact you have to look around and then make a stand. And if they're not evil, they'll go, wow, I didn't realize I was doing that. And I apologize, because they get caught up. They're caught up in it too. So if you don't help them become aware of it, but if you try to make them become aware of it, and they're like, shut up, fuck you, you don't know what you're talking about. You need to just walk away from them. Get them out of your life. You're going to find you're going to do that anyway. That was why I posted those reels where when you find yourself, it seems lonely. When you do that, you find yourself with these people disappearing and your circle shrinks more and more and more. Don't feel bad about that. It's because you're changing. What will happen is you're going to meet all these other people that are more like you. But first, you have to diminish and get all that negative out and start reinforcing your positive. And you balance yourself. You find yourself in the eye of the storm. And then you can think clearly. And then when you do, you start looking around at what you want to look at and start asking questions. And then you change yourself. That's the shadow work. You change what's going on within you, how you think about yourself. And that changes how you see the world and how you talk about other people. And that changes how people interact with you, because you're no longer being negative and pointing your finger at everybody, and people will start listening to you more. And then people are going to start going, that's a liar. He's lying. She's lying. They don't know what they're talking about, because they don't want you to be telling people stuff. All right, let me continue.
Do what we call contagious diseases play any part in this process with respect to the unmanifested self? Ra, I am Ra. These so-called contagious diseases are those entities of second density which offer an opportunity for this type of catalyst. If this catalyst is unneeded, then these second density creatures, as you would call them, do not have an effect. In each of these generalizations, you may please note that there are anomalies, so that we cannot speak to every circumstance but only to the general run or way of things as you experience them. 34.8 Questioner. What part do what we call birth defects play in this process? Ra, I am Ra. This is a portion of the programming of the mind/body complex totality manifested in the mind/body/spirit of third density. These defects are planned as limitations which are part of the experience intended by the entity totality complex. This includes genetic predispositions, as you may call them. 34.9 Questioner. Thank you. Would you give me the same type of information about the self in relation to the societal self? Ra, I am Ra. The unmanifested self may find its lessons those which develop any of the energy influx centers of the mind/body/spirit complex. The societal and self interactions most often concentrate upon the second and third energy centers. Thus, those most active in attempting to remake or alter the society are those working from feelings of being correct personally or of having answers which will put power in a more correct configuration. This may be seen to be of a full travel from negative to positive in orientation. Either will activate these energy ray centers.
Sorry, I had to go in and help my mother. She was coming in here to see what I was doing and sit down at the table. So I had to go and get her to sit down in there. She's, for whatever reason, having a confusing moment right now. So hopefully if that doesn't change, I'll have to get all off of here. So let me see if I can find something else for her to watch that'll get her attention that she might be a little bit more interested in. And then we'll continue here. I think she's okay with what's there, but she got up to go to the bathroom and then put on her jacket. And then she saw me and she was coming in here to figure out what I was doing. And then she got confused when I was trying to get her to go and sit down. All right. So you're hearing what he's talking about right here. And he's literally talking about how you do these things and how that affects you. Right. So let's continue with this. And so I apologize if you saw me get up and leave. And if you have any questions, please talk about them in the chat. While I was gone right there, if you have any questions, then I'll talk about. But Pamela says, yeah, cutting the ties from those who no longer can relate to or them. It's unfortunate. It is. It's unfortunate that you have to sometimes cut ties with these people who are being this way towards you, but they're making a choice. If they don't want you to cut off ties with them, they're either going to change and start to ascend with you, or they're going to get mad at you and say, you're whatever. And then they're going to storm out. You have to realize that if you're in any kind of relationship with any other human being, if you're in a personal relationship and your partner, whoever that is being mean to you, and if you say stop that and they don't stop it, you have to choose at that point to whether or not you want to continue being with that person or not. Why would you not make that same choice with strangers or people that you would call your friends or your family members? If they don't respect you enough to respect your feelings and you as a person, you need to get them out of your life, because that means that they don't give a shit. That means they're in service to self and you are their toy. You're their pet and you're their prey. So you need to get rid of them. Okay. But you can't just get paranoid and think everybody's doing that to you, because some people are, but they're not actually evil. They're just unaware of it because they're in that storm. But you can't go, you're asleep and you need to wake up, because that's going to trigger their ego and they're just going to get mad at you. So you have to love people enough to allow them to evolve on their own and know that. And it hurts when you start to ascend to that place. It sucks when you look around. One of my sisters is doing that now, and she's like, how do you do this? Eventually you get above that. At first it really sucks because you see what they're doing is hurting themselves, and you try to stop them and they don't listen to you and they think you're crazy. And eventually you stop, you learn from that. Eventually I can't do anything. I keep trying to tell them for their own good. And it's like, welcome to parenthood. Welcome to social work, as Ray said to me when we were talking about it. Welcome to social work, Ray said. And I laughed and went, yeah, right. Because the truth is, you can't make anyone believe what you're saying. All you can do is try to get them to start thinking. That goes back 5,000 years. That's a quote from Socrates. That's 5,000 years ago, right? People will tell you it was only 3,000 years ago. It was a little further back. Even if it was only 3,000 years ago, that's 3,000 years ago. Socrates said that. I can't make anyone believe anything that I say, but I can get them to think. And that is literally someone who's very awake, that is telling the truth about reality in the world. When I first heard that quote when I was young, I went, wow, this guy Socrates was actually really awake. But then he wasn't, because at some point he said, the world is not flat, it's round. And they said, blasphemy, drink this and die. And he did. I would be like, right? But that's me now. Maybe I was Socrates and I went, oh, okay, screw you guys. You don't get it. And he committed suicide because they made him. That was his penance. You were going to be put to death, but you're going to do it by your own hand. And he did. He drank the poison and died. But that was 3,000 years ago. Maybe that was the right thing to do back then to prove the point, right? I mean, Jesus did the same thing. Jesus knew he was going to die and provoked them, the Pharisees, into killing him. so that he could do what he needed to do. Again, would I do that? I'm not that guy. And I don't think I am. Would I want to die to prove a point? No. But if I had to, would I? Yeah. I'd rather not. I will do everything I can do not to. I don't believe that's what I'm supposed to do is become that martyr. I don't believe that that's why I'm here. So I don't have that disillusionment. I don't have that delusion of grandeur to go, I am the Christ returned. I am the chosen one. No, you're not. No, you're not. You think you are because your ego's telling you that, or some psychic is using that to their advantage, and they tell everybody they're the fucking chosen one. Anyway, pardon my American. All right, let's continue. Right, so Pamela says, I do go through that. Let me put on my glasses. Right, I had to learn to stop people pleasing. We all have to learn that. That's not something that only one individual has to learn. You're doing just fine, Pamela, because every one of us in our lives goes through that at some point. I was a people pleaser until I was not, just like you. It doesn't matter that it took, maybe I stopped that when I was 12 and you didn't stop that. That doesn't mean anything at all, because you're going to find as you ascend that there's going to be something that that you learned that I still haven't learned, or that I didn't in this lifetime haven't, or took me in 30 years to learn. We all individually learn things at our own pace, and sometimes people learn things backwards from other people. So that's a knowledge that you get as well. But let me finish reading what you're saying, and then I'll get onto that, right? So I stopped people pleasing, and I woke up and I learned to stand in my own power with my sisters. Helped me finally left because I was too difficult to manipulate. Good, right? And now that I've met the man of my dreams, I heard about that, by the way. Congratulations on that. I met the man of my dreams. How spirit closes one door and then opens another one, right? It's amazing, Leo. Yes, it is. But see, you learned the first step in avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence. You realized there was the trap and you needed to fix it. And that in that one particular trap, we all have to do that with everything in our lives. So you're not going to ever be done, right? There's always going to be something else that you got to work on. And there should always be something that you're going to work on, because we're really only in the first place that the soul becomes self-aware. So we're at the bottom. We're in kindergarten here for souls. This is baby soul place. So no one in this reality, in third dimension, is ever going to know everything and be perfect. Because when you know that and you are that, which means you have returned to become one with the creator of the universe. We're nowhere near that here. So we are completely imperfect. We will always be imperfect. But if we are always improving, then we are doing what we're supposed to do. It is only when you are running in place or getting worse that you're not doing what you're supposed to do. Okay. So it's okay that we have these things, like I said to my brother, I literally was doing laundry yesterday, and I went out I was doing my mother's sheets. Luckily she has other sheets. And I went out, and it was like an hour and a half later. I got to go put the stuff in the dryer. And I opened up the washing machine. It had filled up with soap and then froze. So it was water full of soap with her top and bottom sheet of a king size bed. Cow King, one of the biggest in the world. I think European King's the only one's bigger. So literally I was like, oh no, what do I do? And then when I tried to tinker with it, and all of a sudden it started smoking, I was like, whoa, look out. I had to call the manager and say, this is what's going on. And the maintenance guy came over and said, the timer blew up. We got to order a new timer. So I had to literally take the sheets out, and I got them out of there, and I put them in the bathtub, and then I had to rinse them off to try and get as much soap out as I could. And then I had to figure out how I was going to dry them while the dryer still worked. So I did that and went, okay, whether they're soapy or not, I just got to, it's not going on the bed, so I don't have my mother sleeping on them and getting, all that soap on herself and having her skin get all screwed up. So we made her bed with other sheets, and then I dried them, and now I'm going to wait. And once the washer's on, I got to wash her things a couple of times to fix it. So I told that to my brother. He says, if it's not one thing, it's another. And I'm like, well, it's the way this place is. This is the place of doing. It's supposed to be that way. Everything we make is imperfect because we are imperfect. So it's going to eventually break. It's supposed to, because that's the cycle of life. So we're supposed to also, that plays out in front of us, because that's what we do. That's what we are. And we're supposed to learn all of these lessons. And that's what Ra's referring to here. And we'll get back to Ra. Ra's referring to that with, if you don't catch the lesson for what it's for, and you take it as a negative, then you're missing the point of every lesson, because every lesson is not supposed to be a negative. It's supposed to be a positive. But going back to Denise, when she was talking about negative thoughts becoming your karma, If you are in the negative place, you're always going to see the negative and never the positive. You're not going to see positive in the world. You're not going to see positive in anybody. You're only going to see the negative. That's because it's a reflection of you, because you see the world as you are, not as it truly is. It's only when you get yourself to that place. This is why if you go back and watch my reels from the last 2 weeks, other than the Christmas and New Year's ones, all of the ones that are about spirituality is about what we're talking about right here. Okay. So if you put yourself into that 0 point, being upright and being with that in the eye of the storm doesn't affect you. You can see it and it's there and it's everywhere you look, except for where you are. And when you look up, there's nothing. And when you look down, there's nothing. But everywhere else is the storm. That's the best vantage point for the storm, other than being, completely outside of it. But you can't see it from the top down. You just see the storm in the eye. You can't see it from the bottom up. You can't see it when you're in it. The only place you can truly see it is in that center point. That's the only place that you can just look around at the storm in all of its guise, wherever it's happening, and still be protected. So you're supposed to move yourself into that 0 point. And that 0 point means you get all the negative out. Nothing is harming you, and you're not harming yourself. So you're centered, you're focused, you're balanced, and you're not being bombarded by your own ego, by your own. That's where when we raise you up into that place of being the experiencer and witnessing, where the ego and the thinking mind and the pain body can't reach you, that is us putting you in that 0 point, in the eye of the storm. It's the one place where you're actually you, and you're not being in any way affected by anything in this reality. So do you see how I don't know if I didn't make that connection until just now for you, but this is what I'm talking about. And this is what Raw's talking about. So when we give you that, like when we do that, and we're trying to achieve in meditation, and when I do that 30-second meditation and I bring you to that place and show you in the world that you achieve that place naturally, that's what we're talking about, the 0 point, the eye of the storm, where nothing can affect you there. They don't want you there because they don't have control over you. So they're trying to keep you in the storm at all costs and keep you completely in a whirlwind so that you only hear what they say to you, because they're an ego, because they're evil. All right, let's continue.
There are some few whose desires to aid society are of a green ray nature or above. These entities, however, are few due to the understanding, may we say, of fourth ray that universal love freely given is more to be desired than principalities or even the rearrangement of peoples or political structures. 34.10 Questioner: if an entity were to be strongly biased toward positive societal effects, what would this do to his yellow ray in the aura as opposed to an entity who wanted to create an empire of society and govern it?
I paused there for a second because I see that my Wi-Fi is dipped down. I'm waiting for it to come back. So I'm sure I started buffing for you guys and some of you. So if that happened, I'm aware of it. I looked up and saw that it dipped down. Now it's back. So I'll let it go. But yeah, like Rick said, he said he says, like before a major awakening, you go through shit and then you come out all glorified thinking that you got it. And then the other side comes and stomps on you, right? And storms you again. That's what they do. Your ego does the same thing because they're an ego. You have to realize that evil people are living in their ego. They believe they are the ego. They're not thinking I am the ego. They think the ego is them. They think the thinking mind is them. That is what it means to live in the flesh, live in the 3D reality and want likes, clicks, power, money, glory, fame, all of that control. You become obsessed with that because you then believe, the more you become obsessed with this place, the more you have to believe there is no God, there is no religion, all that's fake. But to justify this, you have to de-justify that. So you have to become secular. And then you can join the Illuminati and get rich and famous and powerful, but they're going to pimp you out. They're going to rape you. They're going to pillage you. They're going to make you do all kinds of shit that you don't want to do that is very evil for that. Because you don't get anything for free. They control it all because they're bigger evils than you are. Right? So you're going to be their slave. Just know that. They're going to punk you in. And they own you. And that's what they do. Okay, so you don't want that. You have to choose. Do I want the matrix, money, power, fame, control, and all of that, and put my head in the sand and not know anything? That was the whole thing you were supposed to learn from that guy. I don't remember his name, when he was like, I'll give up everybody that's fighting against you guys. I want to be back in the Matrix, but I want to be mind wiped, but I want to be somebody rich and famous. But he wouldn't, if they gave him, if he got away with it and they gave him his thing, he would never even know that it happened. He would not even know why, that he's rich and famous, and he doesn't care. He just doesn't want to be in this reality anymore. And he wants to go back to what he knew was better, because he didn't have any good food because they were eating crap food. It didn't have any taste. But in the Matrix, when he was there, he was like, oh, eating a freaking steak, and this is beautiful. And I just want to be back in this, because it was comfortable. And he was afraid. He didn't like being out there where in the real world where he had to do any work. A lot of people will choose that. You have to see that. And they're going to, that's the enticement. That's why even the Jedi way, that when people go, no, it's easier, more seductive. The dark side is, because it is the physical. It is money. It is power. It is sex. It is control. It is fame. It is all those things that if you buy into that, it is what you want. It's what you need. It's what you crave. And you can have all of that. That's all you'll ever have. And when you get it, this is what happens to everybody who's rich. When you get it, you realize that this is where going to the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, right? That's when you know that like their greed, they went and they took the coins, and they didn't realize that at the very beginning, and Barbosa tells you the story when he's talking to Elizabeth Turner, when she's saying she's Elizabeth Turner, when she's saying that she's, instead of who she really is, and they think that she's who they need to keep because she has the coin. But him telling, nothing could slake our lust, nothing quenched our thirst. And that is what happens when you're living evil, is no matter what you do, when you first do it, it's like smoking crack. You get high for a second, and then it's gone, and you're chasing that high for the rest of your life. That is what happens here. And so they're like, I need more money. I need more power. I need more control. I got to have sex with everybody. I'm going to rape and pillage and murder and do these things. And no matter what you do, it's still not going to ever be enough. And you want more and more and more and more. And eventually you learn that that's not the way, because you will never, ever, there's never enough. No matter how much money you have, no matter how much power you have, no matter how much control you have, no matter how much sex you have, no matter how much fame you have, it's never enough. And you know that it's never enough, and you keep trying to make it enough. And eventually some of them just live with that and go, I don't care. I would rather rule in hell than to live on my knees. And so they'll just stay evil, knowing, and grow old and die knowing this is it. There is nothing else, and I don't have, and all of that I have means nothing. But they don't want you to know that, because for them to have a station above you, you have to think that it means everything. Do you see? You're supposed to learn. The first step in avoiding a trap is learning of its existence. You're supposed to learn that that's the trap. That is the trap. That's the trap. And so that's not the right way. But you can't learn that until you do it. So if I say, don't touch that fire, you're going to burn yourself. If you've never burned yourself in fire, you're not going to listen to me. You're going to hear me and then want to touch the fire more than if I didn't say anything to you at all. So I'm not helping you by saying, don't do that, because if I say that, you're going to do it faster. So, that's just kind of what happens. All right, let's continue. So literally you have to learn that anything that's negative that's happening to you, my father used to teach us, turn it to a positive. Don't see it as a negative. Whatever it is, find the positive in it. No matter someone died, find the positive in that. What's positive about somebody dying? There's loss and they died. Yeah, that's the bad part. Find the positive in that. What did you learn from it? You learned that. That's why I loved in Sweet Home Alabama, when she stands him up at the end at the altar, his mom, who is egoic, mayor of New York City, full of ego, always has been. He wasn't. Dylan McDermott says, she's like, aren't you going to let her get away with this and just stand you up at the altar? And he was like, wow. So this is what this feels like. And he just lived in it, and he experienced it and saw it as a positive, not a negative. His heart was broken. He was stood up at the altar in front of all of his friends and family and embarrassed by it. And that's what that feels like. And the mom was like, you're going to let her get away with this? He's like, yeah, I think I am. And he said, thank you. And he just left. And mom, of course, got angry and got her butt kicked for it. Got punched in the face over it. But the point of that was the way it was written was to show you that he didn't. He could have reacted and like attacked her. He could have murdered her. He could have started bawling and ran for his life. It would never change what happened to him, no matter how he reacted at this point. It happened. She was still in love with her husband that she was actually still married to, and she didn't want to get married, and she didn't realize it until that moment. And that was her life. And he acknowledged that, lived in it, accepted it, realized that that was her destiny. You can't get mad at her. You can't hold her hostage for it and ruin your own life because she was choosing to be in her own life. If he was in service to self, he would try to wreck her, ruin her, do everything he could do, sue her, whatever he could do to ruin her life. Okay? Know the difference. Dylan McDermott's character in that movie was in service to others, not in service to self. And he chose to accept it for the positive that he learned from it and go, wow, okay, that's what that feels like to have that happen to you. My heart's broken. I'm sad. It'll be a while probably before I get married or try to again. But he saw it as a positive, as the experience for what it was. And he was going to move on with his life. His mom was out of her freaking mind, right? That's the purpose of what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to see it and find the positive in every negative. And my father taught us that from the time we were children, to be like that and to see things that way instead of the other way. Most people don't do that. They're not aware of it. So I was lucky that way that I had that family that did that. Okay, let's continue here.
With an iron fist. What would be the difference in the yellow ray activity of these two entities? Ra, I am Ra. Let us take two such positively oriented active souls no longer in your physical time/space. The one known as Albert, who went into a strange end, to it, a barbaric society in order that it might heal. This entity was able to mobilize great amounts of energy and what you call money. This entity spent much green ray energy both as a healer and as a lover of your instrument known as the organ. This entity's yellow ray was bright and crystallized by the efforts needed to procure the funds to promulgate its efforts.
All right, hold on. I'll be right back. I'm going to let it play. I'm going to go and close the blinds because it's getting dark. And if I don't do it, my mother will get up and do it. All right. So I'll be right back. I'm going to go and do that. I'll let Ra talk.
However, the green and blue rays were of a toweringly brilliant nature as well. The higher levels, as you may call them, being activated, the lower, as you may call them, energy points remain, in a balanced being, quite bright. The other example is the entity, Martin. This entity dealt in a great degree with rather negative orange ray and yellow ray vibratory patterns. However, this entity was able to keep open the green ray energy, and due to the severity of its testing, if anything, this entity may be seen to have polarized more towards the positive due to its fidelity to service to others in the face of great catalyst. 34.11 Questioner, could you give me the last names of Albert and Martin? Ra, I am Ra. These entities are known to you as Albert Schweitzer and Martin Luther King. 30.
Yeah, if you don't know who those two people are, you should look them up. Most everybody knows who Martin Luther King is, but if you don't know who Albert Schweitzer is, you might want to look up Albert Schweitzer. And so you have an idea. I'm not going to go into those details because I could go on to about both of them for another hour on just those two each or longer. So you should look into them if you don't know who they are, right? Most everybody, if you're an American, you know who Martin Luther King is. Martin Luther King Jr. and Martin Luther King. Those are two different people. Martin Luther is another person, by the way, that those two are named after. Martin Luther created Lutheranism. Martin Luther King was somebody completely different. Martin Luther King Jr. is the activist who was fighting for civil rights for African Americans in the United States. If they're African American, they are in the United States. Because you're not African American if you live in England. You're African English. Right? I don't know what they call themselves over there. Do they say Afro England? I don't know what they say, whether they have to say that, right? Otherwise, but you're not African American because you're not in America, right? So if you're in Africa, you're just an African. But if you're an African and you're in Sweden, you're not an African American. You're an African Swede. Right? Let's continue.
4.12 Questioner, I thought that was correct, but I wasn't sure. Can you give me the same type of information that we have been getting here with respect to the unmanifested self interacting between self and gadgets, toys, etc. inventions?
Right now, I want to address what Cassie was talking about. She said she had a vision the other day, and let me back up here and read that. I had a vision yesterday of my future self hugging the now me and thanking me for everything I did. I did and loving myself for who I am now. She said, pretty tripping and beautiful. And she said, after that, she said, that's how my future self saw the now me. Does that make sense? Yeah, actually it does. Because your future self is going to be more awake than you are now, and more understanding than you are now. And your future self is always going to look at, if you're ascending, your future self is always going to look at you through the eyes of a more awake, like person who's a parent or something to the same person, but also thank them for what they're going through in the past that makes you who you are in the future, because you're more awake. If you're seeing yourself and you're more negative in the future and you are devolving and becoming more evil, yourself in the future is going to be like in the movie Back to the Future, where Biff as an old man goes back to help Biff become rich in the past. And he's like, you're an idiot, shut up and listen to me. And you know what I mean? Because he's evil, and he knows he's going to become evil. Do you see my point? So if your future self is talking shit to you, it's either your ego or you're on the wrong path. And your future self's going, wise up, you dumbass. You need to stop letting people fuck with you, and you need to take advantage and kill. That means you're on the wrong path, and your future self is evil, and you need to change something, right? Let's continue.
RA, I am RA. In this particular instance, we again concentrate for the most part in the orange and in the yellow energy centers. In a negative sense, many of the gadgets among your peoples, that is what you call your communication devices and other distractions such as the less competitive games, may be seen to have the distortion of keeping the mind/body/spirit complex unactivated, so that yellow and orange ray activity is much weakened, thus carefully decreasing the possibility of eventual green ray activation.
I didn't know that. So Joanna said that they call themselves British Africans. See, so at least they're over there. That means they're saying British first, African second. Over here, it's African first and then American second. So there's a difference in the mindset of the people. They consider themselves Brits before they consider themselves Africans. Over here, they're like black first. That's why Black Lives Matter, black first, right? So there's a difference in the attitude. I'm sure they act the same way, though, in the organizations that are negative, because I'm sure you have Black Lives Matter there as well as here. It's a global corporation that was set up by white Jewish men that came from Germany, who were turning in their own people during the Second World War to the Nazis. And some of them are Nazis that are controlling that. You should look into that and find out, like the Soros family donates most of the money to Black Lives Matter, that makes Black Lives Matter and controls Black Lives Matter. And he is, in fact, a Jewish German fellow who turned in his own people to the Nazi party and got rich off of that, and then bought, Pfizer. What? Pfizer and Moderna. I'm sorry, huh? You should look into that. Anyway, let's continue.
Others of your gadgets may be seen to be tools whereby the entity explores the capabilities of its physical or mental complexes, and in some few cases, the spiritual complex, thus activating the orange ray in what you call your team sports and in other gadgets such as your modes of transport. These may be seen to be ways of investigating the feelings of power, more especially, power over others or a group power over another group of other selves. 34.13 Questioner, what is the general overall effect of television on our society with respect to this catalyst? Ra, I am Ra. Without ignoring the green ray attempts of many to communicate via this medium such information, truth, and beauty as may be helpful, we must suggest that the sum effect of this gadget is that of distraction and sleep. 34.14 Questioner, can you...
Right, so before you ask the next question, so literally Ra is saying, Don's asking, what was television? Distraction and sleep. The major thing that happens to you the more you watch television or on the internet now, because there wasn't an internet back then, because it was 1981, is designed to distract you and put you to sleep. That's why it's called programming. That's why it's called the program. Your show on television is called the program, because they're programming your mind and controlling your mind. And they're trying to put you to sleep, keep you sitting there in front of the TV screen going, and that's why I put in my background, which is not up there right now. Usually in the background, I have the newscaster sitting there, and he says, it's 6:00 up next, what we want you to think. That's the truth of these external egos. That is the programming, that is the internet, that is the television, that is radio, that is everything. They control it all. So they're controlling the narrative and all of that. That's them holding onto the pine cone. It's not them giving you knowledge that you think is the Anunnaki handing you knowledge because they have the pine cone in their hand. That's them grabbing your third eye and controlling your mind. That's what that means. Everyone's like, oh, they're bringing knowledge. And it's the knowledge that they have in the handbag. That's what the Anunnaki's doing. No, that's them grabbing the plans and the knowledge of how to get control of your mind and create all of this place for you to make you believe that this whole place is completely different than it really is, and to control everything. You need to be waking up to that. And if you don't, I don't care. You have to figure it out for yourself. I'm here to give you the ability to be able to stand in that place, because that is what was taken from you. I don't have to defeat them. That's why I say there is no war. There's no war for the minds of the people, the souls of the people. There's no devil on one mountain and God on the other mountain. That doesn't exist, but that is the yin and yang. So that is figuratively what's going on here, but it's not literal. Okay? It's not literally what's going on. It's figuratively what's going on. It is what you're supposed, that's the internal struggle that's going on. External is only happens to remind you of the internal. Because what we manifest, so if we believe there is a God and a devil, it's going to manifest for us because we're all believing that. They know that, so they change the narrative to get you to believe what they want. There is a heaven. You only live once, and if you do good and you have water chucked on your head from some guy that waves his hand at you and says some shit in Latin, that you're going to go to this place called heaven. Literally, there's a website. I see these commercials on TV now where they go, when you die, are you going to go to heaven? Or not? You can find out. Go to heavenornot.com and find out if you're going to heaven. In fact, they're preaching to you to scare you. You may not be going to heaven, and only we can tell you that. Go to our robot, go to our website with our algorithm, and it will determine for you. All you have to do is give us all your personal information. When you were born, your name, your place of birth, the date, the time, everything that you were born. We'll get your social security number if we can get it from you. And then we'll have the computer go, and now I'll guarantee you it's going to say 100% of the time, I haven't done it, but I'll guarantee you it's going to go, nope, you're going to go to hell unless you sign up for this course. And we can show you the way. Buy our product, subscribe to this website, and we'll save you. You have to accept Jesus into your heart. We have a bunch of churches that we recommend in your area that you need to go to. Okay? And those churches pay them money to make sure they get parishioners that come there, and they get a kickback if the church isn't actually theirs. They get a portion, just like a vending machine, where they share the profits of them filling your seats. They get a cut of it. That's the truth of what's going on there. Because if it were real, they wouldn't have to fear you. They wouldn't have to give you that fear. Because, first of all, there is no heaven. There is no place that you're going to go to. That's one of the biggest lies that is part of the lies. There is no place that you're going to go to right after here. Well, if you do real good, you'll become a pillar, a statue that's in the shape of an old Roman or Greek pillar. And you'll be next to God, near God, in God's presence, and you'll be there for the rest of eternity. Can't move, can't do anything, can't talk, because pillars don't get to speak. They don't really think either, but you'll just be there. That's your reward. That's the best they got. On the other hand, if you murder people and die because we told you so, then when you get there, if you're a guy, you get to have 99 8-year-old children, girls, to rape. Right? Maybe we'll give you 11. Doesn't matter. They're going to be virgins either way. Every day. So you'll get a whole new batch. We'll make a whole batch of females for you to have sex with for the first time. What happens when you're done with them? Do you get more? Never mind that now. Never mind that now. Just strap this on and go over there and blow yourself up. Right? So what happens? How often do I? First of all, I was unaware that in the spiritual, as being in heaven, that we had sex there. Right? Oh, never mind that now. Of course you do. How do you think angels are born? They have sex. I don't remember seeing that in any Bible anywhere on the face of the earth, that they're, except for when they're trying to get you to kill yourself. Just saying. You can believe whatever you want, but I'm just saying, I don't know that there's any procreation outside of the physical. So I don't believe that there'd be any sex happening, because that only happens in the physical, which is down here. Right. But if you're a child and we've controlled your mind, you believe that when you go there, there's sex happening. It's a party. It's just like here, only it's up there. Okay. So you're going to go there and you're going to have all kinds of food. It's like Valhalla, murder and die in combat here. And you get to go there and you get to eat and drink and party and have sex, and then go to sleep. And the next day when you wake up, you get to murder and kill each other all day long. And then everybody gets up after the carnage and all that pain and misery and having your head chopped off and your hands and arms chopped off and being run through. And then you get to have sex and you get to drink and you get to eat all kinds of food and laugh about it. And then you just do that every single day for eternity. But that would get fucking old after a while. That hurts. Never mind that, because you get to have sex afterwards. With who? Oh, the 88 virgins. I mean, think about it. If you actually think about it, the craziness that they're teaching only works if you're a 5-year-old child. That's why they get a hold of you when you're young like that and you're not thinking for yourself yet. And they convince you that those things are real. The churches are convincing you that this is the only life you have. And when you leave here, are you going to go to this place called heaven? Well, we can tell you. If you're not, we have a program that can tell you that. We have a whole website dedicated to that. Right? So we know. You don't know, but we do, and we can assist you. Guarantee you you're not going to go there and they're going to go, you're fine. Guarantee that's not going to happen. But you're good. You're going to heaven. You don't need anything. You don't need me at all. Keep doing what you're doing. How many times do you think that website's going to tell people that? Right? I would wager maybe 1 or 2% of the time so they know that if they don't say that at all, someone's going to get onto that and sue them over it. So I'm sure that the number is far greater that they say, oh, nope, you need some help and let us tell you how. All you got to do is start funneling your money to us and we'll make sure, send me money, send me green, heaven you will meet, make your contribution and you'll get a better seat. Okay. That's from Metallica, Leper Messiah. I didn't just make that up and I'm not going to try and pretend I did. Band Metallica put that in a song 40 years ago. Here we go. Let's continue.
You give me the same type of information that we've been working on now with respect to the self-relationship with war and rumors of war. Ra, I am Ra. You may see this in relationship to your gadgets. This war and self-relationship is a fundamental perception of the maturing entity. There is a great chance to accelerate in whatever direction is desired. One may polarize negatively by assuming bellicose attitudes for whatever reason. One may find one.
Well, see, now that's literally what Joanne was talking. You guys are talking in the chat, right? So the stuff that happens internal, that battle plays out in the external, right? Because everything that you have going on. So Joanne's right about that, right? To prevent the external wars, we have to deal with the internal wars. And that's 100% right. That is giving off that vibration. Yes, Joanne is right. If I'm saying that right, it's not just Joanne. I'm sorry, it's Joanne. That's absolutely right. That's my point. That's what Ra's talking about here. We have to deal with that on our internal so we don't externalize it. Because getting back to what Denise was asking about karma, if we're not dealing with the internal battle, then what happens is that becomes our reality. As below, so above. As within, so without. So what's going on within us, conflicted, war, fighting over everything and confusion is what we will then manifest to be around us. It does that because whatever you're going through is supposed to manifest in the external so that you see it and become aware of it, because you're supposed to be, that's the trap. Your first step in avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence, right? So we have to, the only way we can prevent that was with the song from the Cranberries when they were talking about zombie, the song Zombie. You should listen to that song. That's what she was talking about when she wrote that song, was that the internal struggle is what's happening, but all of us inside not dealing with our own self is what's making the wars manifest and the chaos manifest in the physical. So we're supposed to take care of ourselves. We don't have to take care of the whole world. All we have to do is take care of ourselves, because every time one of us fixes ourselves internally, we change our mindset, and that starts changing our reality. We stop eating the wrong foods, we stop listening to certain music, we stop watching certain things on television or at all. We stop paying attention to the internet. We stop paying attention to that. We move into that place, which is that center of the eye of the storm, which is in your center, and now you're not affected by that. And what that does is it changes the vibration of everyone around you. Those people that are repelled by your now positive energy will be repelled, and they'll move away from you, and they'll only go around their own people. And then the people who are not repelled by you, those people will come into your life more readily. The more people that do that and take care of themselves, the more that reverbs out to the all. It changes this place. And that's what Joanne was talking about right there. I don't know what else was said after that, but yes, that's what's going on there. Joanne said 100% yes, right? So literally, we have to look at all of that stuff, right? Cassie said, but does our internal not affect our external? No, it does. That's the point. That's what she's saying. Our internal affects the external. So on the positive side, this is my point where I'm getting at, what she was talking about. When you fix yourself internally and you get all the negative out and you start putting positive reinforcement to yourself, you're then going to do the same thing to other people. You're going to start being more positive, and that's going to affect them. You're also going to treat people differently. Instead of being negative and reinforcing negativity towards them, you're going to start reinforcing positive towards them. And then they're going to start changing themselves, because that's what's going to happen around you. And if it doesn't, they're going to move away. And what happens is then other people come around you, and you're both positive to each other, and you're affecting each other in a better, more positive way, and you ascend faster. And then you also change the all. So the internal on the positive becomes the internal on the positive internally becomes positive externally for you, and that changes other people around you. That's literally you being that drop of water in the ocean. And some people are like, they go beyond that and go, you're not just the drop of water, you're an ocean in that drop, because they want you to realize how much effect you have on the universe itself. You count, we count. So all you have to do is change the negative about yourself, become honest with yourself, and fix yourself. That's going to fix the all. In some ways, it just takes a lot longer for things to manifest for the entire species. When you have 1% of the species controlling 90% of all of the information and bombarding you with evil, it takes a little bit longer to make changes when you don't control the narrative that they get you addicted to. Okay, they get you addicted to all of these devices, to all of these platforms, and all of those platforms are spreading fear. The news does not give you anything positive. One positive story, and 1%, 99% of the stories are murder, rape, pillage, mayhem, destruction, war, fear, everything, right? I mean, that's in everything. That is what everything is designed to be. It's not in any way positive. That's why some of the programs on television, when you watch them, they have positive reinforcement. They're trying to teach you something positive. But most of them are being controlled now, and they're not teaching you positive. They're teaching you woke agenda, right? I literally use Duolingo. I've been using it since 2016. That app has changed in the last 5 years. And it used to be that when you were reading something, or someone was talking and there's a little character, if it was a little boy character, everything he said was a masculine thing. You're supposed to know that because he's a boy. So he's saying things that are masculine because he's a masculine, and the feminine is always the women, talking about when, and if there's someone's referring to a woman, it's always feminine. Now, because it's gone to the woke agenda, you have no idea whatever the character is that's on there, whether it's a man or a woman, it's going to more than half of the time be speaking of itself as if it's a female, not a male. So the only way you have to become aware that they're doing that, so that you can understand that it's still masculine and feminine, but you have to ignore, not get confused by the teaching, because that's what they're trying to do. Because otherwise you have no idea when to say masculine and feminine things, which is what they're trying to do. So I'm okay with that if they're going to do away with it, right? In America, we don't have masculine. English doesn't have masculine and feminine sentences, unless we say he or her, him or she, he or she, him or her. That's when one word makes it, whether we're talking about a male or a female. That's it. Okay. In most languages, the entire sentence is spoken either masculine or feminine, depending on what your gender that you're referring to is, or what your gender is that you're saying about yourself. Okay. I'm okay with all that going away. That's annoying, especially if you learned English as your first language, because then you got to learn, when am I supposed to say something that is masculine, and when am I supposed to say it's something that's feminine? Because some words are just innately masculine and some are innately feminine. That screws you up, right? English doesn't do that. English is just the word is the word, and you have to give it. And it's not, you don't say the truck is a feminine, right? It's just a truck, but she's driving the truck. It's her truck. Okay. So that's where you're assigning that gender to. But in most languages that do that, the entire sentence is now with a feminine wording for every word, so that you understand that. And that's annoying, and it shouldn't be that way. It seems normal if you learned that language first, and English is then screwed up because there is no gender. Well, they're trying to erase genders now. So if they're trying to erase genders, let's just take it out of all language and have every language be neutral, and then you just assign a sex to whoever you're talking to, or just do away with all that. That's what they're trying to do. And everyone's like fighting against that. And I'm like, let it happen. Who cares? Gender neutral, everything is just fine, right? If you're Irish, you know about that, because half of the names that the Irish use are gender neutral. Men and women use the same words, same names. Kelly, man and woman. Sean, man and woman, right? We don't have to say Michael or Michelle, right? It doesn't matter. In French, it's the same way. Michelle is man or woman. So there's a lot of languages that are gender neutral with the names, and we're already doing that with the language. So, now it's getting confusing to me, because I can't look at the gender of the little character they have speaking anymore, because the little boy's talking about having his purse, right? And he never did that until about 3 years ago. It started when it got really prevalent in the world, and everybody was forced by what you guys don't know. There's a corporation that controls everything behind the scenes to do so. Now that's what they're doing in there, and that's confusing people who are trying to learn foreign language, because they don't understand what's happening if they're not aware that it used to be done that way, because of whether you're referring to a female or a male when you're talking, or whether you're talking as a male or a female. But because they're trying to blend them and show you that people could be gay and trans, that they're just, instead of having the little character dress up as a trans, so that that, right? Have the little girl dress up as a boy, so that's what's happening. They're not. They're keeping the character the same, but changing the verbiage to be the opposite sex without explaining to you why they're doing it. Right? That's confusing. It is confusing to me, in the sense that all of a sudden, before I could go, is this supposed to be a masculine or feminine sentence? Oh, it's a little girl character. She's talking about herself, so this is a feminine sentence. Now it could be a little boy character or a little man character, and he's referring to himself in the female. Right? And so if I'm a 10-year-old trying to learn on this app, I don't understand that. That's what it's designed to do damage to. Okay? Because then it's confusing to that, and he doesn't know the difference, because no one's there to say why that's a masculine or feminine. And that's why they're doing it, to get away with it. But if I'm an adult, I get it. And then I have to realize no longer can I use the visual aid, which is what it was designed for in the beginning of having this app. Was the visual aid was there so that you knew whether it was a boy or a girl talking, so that you knew whether or not you were supposed to have a female verbiage or a male verbiage. No longer can you do that. Now you have to read the sentence and go, are we saying we're male or female in this sentence? What are they talking about? And so that makes you think more. I'm all right with that. That's what I'm saying. I'm not like throwing rocks at Duolingo. Love that app. It's a great app. The first step of avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence, because now they're blending that on purpose. You're having more opposite sex being done than not now on that app. So 90% of the time now, probably 80% of the time, if there's a female talking, she's going to be talking as a guy. And 80% of the time, if there's a boy talking, he's going to be talking as a girl on that app now. If you're aware of that, it becomes easier again. But I understand the nature, because I've been speaking Spanish since I was 10. I'm not completely 100% fluent, but I grew up in California. Can't grow up in California without learning Mexican or Spanish, Spanglish at the very least, right? Okay, so let's continue.
Self in the situation of war and polarize somewhat towards the positive, activating orange, yellow, and then green by heroic, if you may call them this, actions taken to preserve the mind/body/spirit complexes of other selves. Finally, one may polarize very strongly third ray asterisk by expressing the principle of universal love at the total expense of any distortion towards involvement in bellicose actions. In this way, the entity may become a conscious being in a very brief span of your time/space. This may be seen to be what you would call a traumatic progression. It is to be noted that among your entities a large percentage of all progression has as catalyst, trauma. Asterisk, this should be fourth ray. RA corrected the mistake in the next answer. 34.15 Questioner, you just used the term third ray in that statement. Was that the term you meant to use?
Right. What Joanne was saying is exactly what I was saying earlier before she got here. You have to change that externalness about who's in your circle that is affecting you, right? If they refuse to stop, if you draw that line, say, don't treat me like that anymore, don't talk to me like that, and they continue, you have to get them out of your life because they're not changing. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're absolutely right. Had you been here an hour ago, you would have heard me say exactly that. Because that's what I said, right? Right. Okay, let's go.
Ra. We intended the green ray. Our difficulty lies in our perception.
Pamela coming at me with some Spanish there, right? That's good, right? And do you know Irish? I'm learning Irish too. Irish is one of the harder languages to learn, and I am Irish. I mean, I wasn't born in Ireland, but I am Irish, and it's because the Gaelic, the Gallic, the Irish, the Scottish version of that, and even the Gaelic version, the Irish version that's non-Irish, which is very similar, right? The Gallic that the Scots speak, and then the Welsh. Those languages that are right there that are Celt are completely different than any language on this earth. It has little bits where you can see influences that might have came from or influenced like some of the Arabic and some of the Slavic languages, but it's not like all the other European languages, which comes from Latin and Greek, right? And Svenska. Those three languages, the Viking language, probably Norwegian first, and Latin and Greek make up the majority of all of Europe and all of the English words that are spoken around the world. That is literally 90% of this language that I'm speaking come from one of those languages, which is heavily influenced. And you can see that if you're learning them, how similar they are. You can see how they evolve when they go away from the only outlier that's weird is the Portuguese to the Spanish, Castilian to the Latin, has influences that are like the Russian and the Czech and the Polish, and it jumps past France and Germany and Denmark and all of that. It's weird how they got influence in that language that comes from the Baltics, and the rest of Europe doesn't have much of that influence. And it might have been their trade. I don't know, and I haven't talked to somebody who's Portuguese to find out who speaks it. I might have talked to Mike over in Brazil who speaks Portuguese to see if he knows the origin of the species there for that. But language is something that I'm doing, and I'm pleased to hear that Jacqueline Taylor is now on Duolingo, and she's learning like 20 languages as well. And we're friends on there, so I follow her. She follows me, and she's really excited. She said the same thing. Wow, it's trippy how similar all these languages are. I'm like, everybody in Europe comes from Greek and Latin or modern Italian, and so even the Spanish is Latin. So Greek, Latin, and the Viking language, literally the entire Europe and English language is a combination of all of those languages. And all the words we use come from those. And then we have little parts from other languages that come from South America, but like the Mayan language. But most of that was influenced by the Spanish as well when they got here. So the entire North and South American continent is more Latin-based language than any other language, because the Spanish had all of this at one point, and then all of Europe. But all of that goes back to the same languages. When you get to the Baltic states and over into to the Asians and to the Africans, their languages are completely different. And then there's that pocket that speak Welsh, Irish, and Gaelic, which is completely changed, is different from everyone. And I haven't found the similarities, but everybody tells me don't look for them because they're not going to be there. I can hear the language influx in words, because words, if you study that, words like, no, yet, nine, that you have, there's that n that means the negative. The word negative comes from the Greek again, but you have all of these the words that mean that have differences in spelling but have the same sound, right? Have a lot of the same sounds, right? That mean that. So those are similarities in language that makes it easier and our brain can figure out that people are unaware of. And I'm getting too far into that and off point. So let me get back onto this, right? Right. So let me get back onto this here and we'll continue here.
Perception of red ray and violet ray is fixed. Thus the inner rays are those which are varying and are to be observed as those indications of seniority in the attempts to form and harvest. 34.16 Questioner, would the red ray, an intense red ray, then be used as an index for seniority, the seniority system of incarnation, as well as the intense violet ray? Ra, I am Ra. This is partially correct. In the graduation or harvesting to fourth density positive, the red ray is seen only as that, which being activated, is the basis for all that occurs in vibratory levels, the sum of this being violet ray energy.
Yeah, I don't know if that's supposed to be a joke either, right? But it could have been, because I think this is what Cassie's referring to here. That I don't know how to say the name of it. Agneta. I don't know how to say the name. I apologize. Literally, right there seems to have been a language called MAGA. I don't know if that's a joke referring to the thing, but you're talking about the 14 or 1500s tied into, and so that I thought is what you were referring to, and that's why I highlighted it, because I was going to answer that. No, that's not a joke, because I thought the same thing. I think that language that you're talking about, I think it goes back further than the 14 and 1500s. I know that's where it's credited to, right? I'm somewhat of a linguist. I don't have a license in it yet, but I'm multilingual, and I'm literally teaching myself 22 languages, 23 if you count English, right? But yeah, there's different languages, and I think that one goes back to further back. I believe that one goes back to the builders, what we would call the builder races, the ones that built Stonehenge and Sacsayhuaman and a few other places around the world, that they were based in the center of their population was in what we call modern day Turkey. And I think that language is a language that comes from there. I think the Mayan and Incan languages out here in South America are part of that and kind of are an offshoot of that societal language, which I would suggest, and a lot of linguists would suggest, that a lot of the modern day Slavic, Norwegian languages, that you can see the influence of the Slavic with the Chinese and the Japanese and that sort of old ancient Indian language. The language that they speak in India is similar. And I think that goes back to that. And I think it was called MEGA because it was, I don't think it meant, like Make America Great Again, like the slogan now, but I think it was because it became the universal language of the time. And so we're looking at, we think that language that you're talking about, I don't know if that's what it was called, but I believe that's what you're referring to, is the leftover portion that has influenced the current languages that we have. And in the Bibles, when they say that everybody used to speak a unified language, and then God, separated everybody and had them speak in tongue, that unified language was the one cultural language that we spoke on this earth. And now there's remnants of it that have influenced the modern languages, and we've evolved because it's been. That's why I think it wasn't the 14 or 1500s. If it was the 14 or 1500 BCE, because I believe that actually goes back of like 100,000 years, and that's part of the discovery that we found when we were learning stuff like the cuneiform from Mesopotamia is kind of based on that older language, because that's, we're looking at that language is at least 4,000 years old, and they said it was based on one that was about 6,000 years prior to that, which would put it before Moses and that time when they were talking over in Egypt by about 10,000 years, because Moses was 5,500 years ago and Mesopotamia was 3.5. And if they say it came from 10,000 years before that, we're looking at 15,000 or 20,000 years before now. Okay. So I think that influence is there. I don't know if it was called that. I'll have to look that up. That's actually kind of cool I gotta turn this off. I'm sorry. I left that up on the screen. I think it's cool. If it was called that, that's so crazy that it was called MEGA, but I could see the concept being a centralized language for the earth, because that society that lived here then, we're starting to realize now, was a global society, and it was a utopian society. And they were warning us about the Anunnaki who got here right after that. And that's when they buried the things at Göbekli Tepe and in a few places where they created compounds and then buried them so that they wouldn't be destroyed when they knew that they were going to be wiped out, but they weren't wiped out by being taken over by these other aliens. They actually had a catastrophe that they foresaw coming and couldn't stop, and it destroyed their population. But we're starting to get off of topic, but history's starting to bear that out now. Let's continue.
This violet ray is the only consideration for fourth density positive. In assessing the harvestable fourth density negative, the intensity of the red as well as the orange and the yellow rays is looked upon quite carefully, as a great deal of stamina and energy of this type is necessary for the negative progression, it being extremely difficult to open the gateway to intelligent infinity from the solar plexus center.
Yeah, the language evolves each generation, and then regionally, Rick. Kids come up with new ways of saying things and new references. So language evolves that way, and then other people start getting onto that, and they start talking that way, and then things just change over time. That's what happens. But it also there's similarities that our brain works a certain way to where we might say a word differently, but we say almost the same word. Like, for instance, I always say like Leo, right? Leo is the Greek word that means lion. The French don't spell words the same way, so their representation of the word Leo is spelled I-L-I-O-N and is pronounced Lion. And then in English, we got that word wrong, and we evolved that word into the word lion, spelled exactly the same. But it's actually the us coming from the Latinizing the Greek, and then the French spelling, which gave us the American or English word lion, which is actually pronounced by the French as lion, right? And that is the way they say the word Leo, which is the word that the Greeks called the lion. So literally, that's how it evolves. It evolves by the way you say things, right? We just say things slightly different than they do in another country, but we don't realize that when we hear like French, right? They use the word mare. We use that here in America. That means a female horse or a mother horse. That word literally means mother in French, mare. And if you listen to the Gaelic, the word mare means mother. Far means father, mar means mother. Mare is just adding an E on the end and changing the A from a hard A to a soft A in the same word. Like lion is to Leo. Lion is to Leo, is to lion. Do you see? So that just is a regional thing where people say words differently because they're in a different place, or languages now officially spell the same word in a different way. The different languages that are Viking languages, D is an L. In the Latin language, two L's makes a J, right? So you would say she, we say she for a female. In Spanish, Castilian, in Latin, it's ella. Two L's make a J sound. But if you're talking in the Viking languages, the two L's aren't a J sound, they're L's, and two D's are on an L sound instead of a D sound. For us, we wouldn't put two D's together unless we do, because there's some words where we say, like rudder, hard D, rudder it means a longer D sound, and that's two D's. But if I'm speaking in Dutch, I won't say rudder, I'll say ruller, because the two D's make an L sound. So that's just the difference in the language and how they articulate in their spelling. And that's just I shouldn't be getting that far into that. Because I don't have a license as a linguist, although I've been studying language my entire life like religion. Right, let's continue a little bit. Then I got to go here soon.
This is necessary for harvest in fourth density negative. 34.17 Questioner, is it possible for you to use as an example our General Patton and tell me the effect that war had on him in his development? Ra, I am Ra.
I got to stop, Joanne. You're absolutely right? For years as a child, this is Joanne talking, I walked around asking, what did they do with the language? I swear I've been here before. You have been. You've been here many, many times. I'm learning that with language and how quickly I pick up the languages, I'm not picking up the language for the first time. I'm remembering it. the hardest thing I have is trying to remember how to spell it because of the changes in the spelling, right? And I know that that's not originally the way they were in the words. I pick up the words very quickly in language without learning how to read and write a language. I could be fluent in every language very quickly because I pick that up, and I don't have to learn it. All I have to do is learn, okay, what does that word mean? You know, like you would say, you know, ¿qué dice ear in español, right? I learned the phrase, well, how do you say ear in Spanish? And then I can ask questions. So you have to learn that first. And then, but once I learn the word, I don't have to know how to spell it. I know it, but I don't, it's not like I have to get it in my muscle memory in my brain. It's like, oh, this is coming to me because I remember it from a distant place. I know this language. So the same. And that is and the reason I stopped and talked about that is because that is one of those things that is showing you that you've been here before and that you recognize that something has changed. Wait, I was here before and they spoke the same language, completely different. This language that I'm speaking right now is called modern common English. If you go to England and ask the people there or look it up online, there's a thing called Middle English, which is foreign enough from this language that you wouldn't even understand it, but it was English spoken by English people, and then Old English. So the evolution of just this language in the last 1,000 years, 800 years, if you go back 800 years ago, 1,000 years ago in time, the people who spoke, wrote, and everything that were telling you that it was English because they were English people doing it, you wouldn't understand right now because it evolved completely to a point where you might get one or two words and go, wait, I recognize that word. But that was what English was then, but it's evolved away from that to what it is now. Okay. And so you're recognizing that because you were here before. And as a kid, you were less veiled. And so you had that memory and you're like, the language is not right. It's not what it used to be. It's different. What happened? Was I gone that long? Yeah, you were. You were gone for at least 100 years. And it might have been longer since the last time you were of the same race that you are now for that language that you learned as a child. And you had the memory of speaking it before. It could have been only 100 years ago. It could have been 200, 500, 1,000 years ago. The last time you were of that race, because we live everywhere, right? If you're here for 10 lifetimes, you're going to live on every continent. There's only 7 continents. So you're going to learn many different languages just from one of each of those lives. Do you see? But you're going to learn more than one language in that time. And if you live longer than that, which most people here have, because people have been stuck here for a very long time, then that means that you've been every race already, unless you're here for the first or second or third or fourth or fifth time. You've already lived on every continent. So there is a memory in your higher self of how to speak all these languages. You just have to learn how to tap into that. And once you start getting to that place, it becomes more apparent. It becomes easier. And then you start hearing these languages and you start picking up on them and you're not going, I've never spoke this before. It seems familiar in an odd way that it shouldn't. Why does it seem familiar? Because you spoke it in another lifetime. All right, let's continue. Like I said, I'm going to go maybe up until 6 if I can make it till 6 my time because it's 5:40 right now, 5:39.
This will be the last full question of this working. The one of whom you speak, known as George, was one in whom the programming of previous incarnations had created a pattern or inertia which was irresistible in its incarnation in your time/space.
Yeah, Rick said it. Yeah, I know. Australian accent's different too. Yeah, no, every region, every country, even the ones that speak English. The Canadians have different sayings and speak in a different way. And you can see the influx of that, like when you get to like Wisconsin, they speak a little bit closer to the way the Canadians speak. And when you get into the South of America, they have a completely different dialect in each state. You get to the West Coast, the East Coast, it's the same in every country. The further away you are from the same people, you're going to have a completely different evolution of the language. And the only thing that's slowing that down is our central schools are teaching a language that they're trying to keep as one central language for your country. And what they're teaching us as proper English in America is not what they're teaching as proper English in England. And it's not what they're teaching as proper English in Australia. Right? You guys they're being taught the accent of that place. I'm being taught the accent of this place. Okay, so I'm being taught the word that is the word in English. Right. But I say car. Out here in California, we say I'm going to go park the car. If I'm in Boston, I'm going to go park the car. Right? If I'm in New York, I'm going to go park the car. Kind of similar to Boston, but a little deeper in the back of the throat. Do you see? Right? And then if you're in the South, right? If I'm in Louisiana, I'm going to go park the car in Louisiana because we talk like this down there. Right? Very proper. This is very proper for the Southerner to speak with this dialect. If I'm in Louisiana, especially, and then you get mush mouth and start talking a little bit more like this when you have a little bit harder time understanding me because you put a little spittle in your mouth when you're talking and you talk a little bit further up toward the front and you use the sides of your mouth as they pop out when you make these sounds when you talk, see? So it's a little bit different. I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to go park it down yonder, down the street, right? So where you are, can you tell I'm a linguist? Where you are gives you a different accent, right? And if you're out here and you're Spanish and you're speaking American or Mexican, right? Hey, man, hey, it's hey, right? They always joke about that. Hey, I'm going to go get in the car, man. I'm going to go and drive over here. And that's like a white person doing that. That's not how they actually sound, right? White people, that's just like, like Scotty on Star Trek. The Scottish thought he was an Afghani who had a stroke, because of the Scottish accent. They call the Irish accent that Americans use on television. The Irish used to joke and call that Irish. I think you guys still do, because it's nothing like the real true Irish accent, but it's the best that Americans do. And it's a crap ass Irish accent. Right. Right. And then if you're, depending on where you are, I mean, that's just the way language works. But and you guys are in Ireland, this, right? Pamela, this. The guys in the east or the west of Ireland, nobody understands them. They don't even understand themselves. Right. That is like the hard line, deep accent that's really hard for people. That's like our Southern accent. It's hard for people to understand. And your Eastern Irish, your Northern Irish, and your Southern Irish, you have a different accent regionally. You don't have the same accent that Peter Coyle has. You guys live in different places and you have a completely different Irish accent. It's distinct, and you know that. If you hear Peter talk and yourself, you know that, and you can tell regionally where Peter lives because of his accent. Same thing in every state, in every city, in every county, in every country around the world. And even the English that I'm speaking, this English is more closer to what they speak on the news, which we call the accent where I come from nowhere, or I come from everywhere, that the newscasters use in America. It's very close to what I'm speaking to you now, only with a lot of fear in it. Right? Yeah, right. Rick says, I get asked by Australians, where's your accent from? Right, because your accent is different from the one they speak wherever they are regionally. I mean, if you look at Bo, right, when he comes on, his accent's different than yours, right? And you guys are both Australian. But Australia is as big as the continental United States, right? You guys got thousands of miles. I don't know how far it is across. We're 3,500 miles or so from west coast of America to the east coast, and I think Australia is kind of the same. And north and south is pretty close to the same distance, 2,000 or 3,000 miles, like America is. I don't know the exact number. You do, right? So literally, he says, no, all over Australia. They think I'm from overseas, and I think it's because you have a slight Kiwi accent, and that, I hope that doesn't offend you. But I think it's because you have a slight Kiwi influence. But I think more so it's influenced by the Aborigines with their accent, even though a lot of them who went to school have that proper Australian English accent. But I can't quote that because I don't know as much about Australian accents as I do American accents. You would know best probably where your accent comes from and what the influence is than I would, right? But you traveled. Okay, so you picked up accents. He said, I traveled for 20 years. So you picked up accents from around the world. And when you came back to Australia, they're like, where are you from? You're not from around here, are you, boy? Right? That's what you'd get if you were in America. Right? 2 years in England, right? And it says 21 changed it, but a bit. Okay, so yeah. So you spent a lot of years in England, and that'll change it. You start picking up the accent of the people that you're with. My ex-wife lives in Tennessee now. And she grew up in California and had the same accent I have. I talk to her now and I'm like, wow, you couldn't tell that she's from here because she's there. You hear it and you start talking like that unless you choose not to. right? My sister just brought that up about Ebonics. That's what we here in America call the accent that Black people use, which they pretend is like this African accent. It's not. It's a Southern accent, right? It's a Southern accent, but so they, like, because they were going to ask you a question, right? And everybody over here in America is picking up part of that when they say mountain, right? Now everybody's saying mountain. So English in America is changing to where you no longer say the hard T's anymore, right? And I see that happening, and some people get bothered by it, but I laugh about it because it's just the evolution of the language. So they talk like that on purpose because they don't want to sound like the man, white people, so they don't talk like this. So I'm going to ask a question, and they say that, and it's becoming a normal thing, and people get annoyed with it, and they're like, oh, dumb people talk like that. Well, the truth is dumb people talk like this. The truth is that most of the language that you speak, if you look at rich people, they don't talk like you. Wherever they are in the world, they talk different than you do. And the reason that you talk the way you do is that's the way they want you to talk, so that they talk a different way so they know who they are when they talk to each other. I know that because I was taught that. Aristocratic English. I was taught by my father how to talk, walk, talk, shoot shit, eat, sleep like an aristocrat, like a rich elitist in this country. Okay? Because he wanted me to understand the difference in the language and the barrier. They talk, they dress a certain way. And that's where I love they did that in a television show that didn't make it. It only had a season or two. But this woman, they were trying to go with this FBI. They were FBI undercover agents, and they were acting like they were drug dealers or smugglers. They were trying to go to be smugglers to buy and sell. They were investigating like stolen priceless paintings. And they needed to go undercover. And the woman was talking to the guy who thought he knew what he was doing. She says, we need to get you out of those clothes because you look like you're, Walmart, JCPenney special. And you need to be wearing, $50,000 to $100,000 clothing. And he was like, why? And she looked at him, and that was when Kanye West was selling his T-shirts at $50,000 a T-shirt, which that T-shirt would have cost him about 5 cents to make. And it should have been sold at Walmart for like $6. And she said, rich people, do you think Kanye West T-shirts actually cost $50,000? No, but people who wear them so they know they're telling the world, I spent $50,000 on this because I'm rich and wealthy. I fit in. If you don't dress like them and act like them, you can act like them, but if you don't dress like them, they're going to know instantly you don't belong. So they wear expensive clothing because only they can afford it. So you're not supposed to be there. That's like if you have to ask the price of something, you can't afford it. Okay? Because if you can afford it, you're never going to ask the price because you don't care. You're rich. So as a rich person, if you're going to be a rich person, you can never ask and haggle about a price, even though that's how rich people stay rich. But they don't do it with each other. They only do it with you and me. The same thing with the way they dress, right? The way they talk, the way they walk. So all of that has to do with the same thing. The evolution of language is that they want it to be separation of the language barrier. And that's why English is so complicated for the rest of you in the world to try and figure out. I've been learning English since I was born, and I still am not fluent in this language to know how to spell all the words. That was my biggest problem, is learning how to spell all these languages because of the barrier between poor people and rich people and what has been done on purpose to the language. The English language is a bastard language that is a combination of all other languages that has only been invented because it's the lowest level vibration of all languages, and it has the lowest level of cadence, and it's supposed to be taught for the slaves. That's literally in any version of this language around the world was they wanted you to speak this language because this is the language of the slaves, right? That's why if you speak other languages, you start to realize that they're really pretty, and that your native language, unless you have a pretty native language already. If you spoke English as your native language in any version of it, you know what I'm talking about. This language is not pretty. It doesn't have a pretty cadence. People who are trying to learn it will tell you that. It's rough. The hardest language on this earth to learn, if it is not your first language, is the one I'm speaking now in any of its dialects. Because this language was invented for slaves. and it is really hard. It's backwards to all other languages. We sound like stupid morons, and it's not beautiful. It's not harmonic at all. It doesn't resonate. All other languages resonate far better than this one. This is the slave language. It's why they wanted to make it. And the common Chinese language is designed the same. That's why they don't like it when, the difference between Mandarin and Cantonese. And then there's a language that only women can speak in China. What? That's true. Right? But that's done the same way. So you have people that get offended. I remember when I was working, and then I'm going to go, but I'm trying to waste time now. We'll just play this out and I want to go. But so I know I'm getting off topic, but it has to do with the balance of all this stuff. So please hear me out. I was working selling computers, and I had two kids that were working for me that were both Chinese. One spoke Mandarin and one spoke Cantonese. Some people that were Asian came in and didn't speak any English. And somebody said, let me go and get so-and-so because he's Chinese. And he came over and he started trying to talk to the people. And he spoke, I don't remember which it was now. He spoke one of them. I think it was Mandarin, whichever one. If you're Chinese, I'm not trying to offend you. I know that one of them is the upper class and one of them is the lower class. And I don't remember if it's Mandarin. I think Mandarin is the higher and Cantonese is the lower. And the kid was of the upper class and they were speaking the lower class. And when they started talking to him, he which is normal if you're Asian, but for Americans, it's kind of rude. He stood there for a second. They started speaking to him and he just turned around and walked away without saying a word. And I was like, what the fuck is he doing? I'm like, bro. And he's like, I'm going to go and get so-and-so. He speaks their language. And he came back and he was talking to them. He talked to them. And so literally they were both Chinese and one didn't speak the other's language. They both spoke English, but one was offended and the other one didn't want to offend because he didn't understand the language. And so out of respect, he didn't speak anything to them. He left and went and got the guy who could translate. And I thought, well, that was rude, but he wasn't being rude. The culture is you don't want to offend either way, cross culture of Cantonese or because truly there is a class there in China. And over here, they tried to eradicate that class, but they didn't want to offend one another. And so he just walked away. And I thought, well, that's fucking rude, dude. What are you doing? He's like, I don't know. That's a Chinese thing. It's okay. I'm not being rude. I'm like, oh, okay. And they didn't get mad. They were just, he came up and did what he needed to do. But that's the way that there's a class, even in English, there's a class in the way you speak. And trust me, if you've heard to somebody who's an aristocrat talk and the way they talk, you see it sometimes. They play it in some movies, but most people think it's that Shakespearean way. That's just a poetic version of English. But people did talk like that at one time. And when it was just coming out of Middle English, coming into the modern English, they did talk like that. So when he wrote that, it was a stylized version even then in the Renaissance of the English that we hear now. Yeah. Joanne says English is a mess. English can mess you up, especially when you're trying to spell it. You see, that's my point. And for us who learned English first, we messes us up when we're trying to spell other languages because we get used to this crazy ass way of spelling words, which is completely not right to what you're saying. And my sister's learning that with Spanish. I told her Spanish is so simple. You can sound it out. And it literally, you write it the way you hear it and the way you say it. So if you're trying to say a word, like desayuno, just know that the Y is a J sound, is a J sound, not a Y. And the word desayuno means breakfast. But it's the way it sounds, desayuno. You break it into pieces, spell it. It spells exactly that way. If you said breakfast in English, and you didn't hear me say break fast, you wouldn't know that it's spelled break fast. You would hear breakfast because that's how most people say it, breakfast. I'm going to have some breakfast. What is that word? It doesn't spell that way. So English will screw your mind up if you didn't learn it as your first language, right? Because then it's backwards too, right? Letters in some words. Yeah, there's some words they're silent letters in a lot of our words. Compound letters that the English stole from the Irish who didn't have the TH sound, still don't in the Irish, right? That's why the word they say far, not father, but they were the ones who would put the compound letters together to begin with. And those don't make sense in English because they'll use like a G and a D together or an H and a D together, and it means a different thing because they didn't have there was no letters, so they put those together to make the sounds, right? And then English picked up these compound letters that don't mean anything in any other language, and the people who invented the compound letters don't use those, right? So it's crazy. So the same thing when you get into the European languages, 2 L's from the Latin language is a J sound, and that same 2 L's sound that is not the J sound in like Dutch and a couple languages right there in that Geet land, that Geet area of the Viking languages, are 2 D's make an L sound, right? So, and then there's an X in some of the words when you get towards the Baltics, the Slavic languages, then the XIA makes a Z sound, and we have a Z, which you say in Australia. And see, so it's weird. But if you learn English first, it's easier to learn other languages because you just forget all the silent letters and hung shit and all the things that we have that don't make any sense in English, because all other languages most of the time make sense. They harmonically sound. Once you understand the differences of using this Viking vocabulary, the Viking letters, because all of the Viking language, this English lettering is Viking. Okay, it's Futhark. And once you get used to what their version of each letter meant and represents for their sounds audibly, it becomes very easy to sound things out and to learn the language. But if you're coming from another language and you're trying to learn this one, you're fucked. It's hard. And we know it. Those of us who know this language, my sister said, I don't think I'm ever going to be fluent in Spanish. And I'm like, are you fluent in English? She's like, pretty much. I'm like, no, you're not. You think you are until you have to spell the words, right? She's like, okay, you're right. I'm like, I'm 56, you're 58. We're 58 years into this language and we're still learning it. And you've been doing Spanish hardcore now for 1.5 years, and you're worried that you're not going to be fluent in it. Spanish is going to come fluent to you a lot faster than this one language. And she started laughing when I didn't think about it that way. All right, let's continue with this so we can finish the session today. And then I got to go.
This entity was of a strong yellow ray activation with frequent green ray openings and occasional blue ray openings. However, it did not find itself able to break the mold of previous traumatic experiences of a bellicose nature. This entity polarized somewhat towards the positive in its incarnation due to its singleness of belief in truth and beauty. This entity was quite sensitive. It felt a great honor/duty to the preservation of that which was felt by the entity to be true, beautiful, and in need of defense. This entity perceived itself as a gallant figure. It polarized somewhat towards the negative in its lack of understanding the green ray it carried with it, rejecting the forgiveness principle which is implicit in universal love. The sum total of this incarnation vibrationally was a slight increase in positive polarity but a decrease in Hive stability due to the rejection of the law or way of responsibility, that is, seeing universal love, yet still it fought on. 34.18 Questioner, do we have enough time for me to ask if the death, almost immediately after the cessation of the war of this entity, could that have been so that it could be immediately reincarnated to possibly make harvest? Ra, I am Ra. This is precisely correct. 34.19 Questioner, thank you. Then I will just ask if there is anything we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or improve the contact. Ra, I am Ra. All is well. We leave you, my friends, in the love and the light of the one which is all in all. I leave you in an everlasting peace. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite creator. Adonai.
All right, so that last part, and then I want to get to what Rick was saying about us going on. That last part of what he had just said, where Don was asking the question, if somebody died, would they be able to reincarnate quickly to make the harvest? He answered the question literally, yes, is the answer. But the truth is that if somebody died and there was a harvest and the person was capable of making the harvest, it's not dependent on you being in human form to make the harvest. Okay. So he didn't clarify that. He just answered the question with, yeah, they would be able to. He didn't even go further with that. Furthering that should have been, if that's what they think they need is to be in human form to then be harvested, then yeah, they can come back and be here. But that has nothing to do with your ascension, other than this is the place where you learn to ascend. You ascend when you're ready. although here everybody's been stuck. So normally you're supposed to ascend when you're ready. A harvesting happens usually if people aren't ascending on their own. It comes to a time where there's a central point where all things line up that usually force the people to then hurry up so they can harvest. But then that's where this place is stuck. You've had a prevalent number of people who are aware of that, and they're pushing back down on that to not allow it to happen, to effectively keep people captive here like you are in a prison. So some of the lies that they're telling about, we're being held captive here are true to a certain extent, but not to the extent that they're like, and they created us and the human race is a petri dish and we were just created as a slave race. All of that's a lie. That's all bullshit. Right. But are they aware of it? And there are people in the flesh, in the third dimensional, making sure that people can't ascend? Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's true. That's that is the modus operandi of the Orion Crusaders and what Ra is warning you about. That's their operative way of continuing to have control so they can rape all of the resources of a planet and enslave those people to do their bidding, to feed their war machine in the physical 3D world, which they're no longer here. They came here and ran away as soon as they got here because we got here to chase them out. They ran away. And they've moved on, and there's a contingent of people who left and went there to go get them. And then there's a group of us who stayed here to repair the damage. Okay, that's our job, mop up. You guys just aren't aware of that until you are. Okay, but Rick said, that we dribble on. What was the word you used? Right? I don't see it. I don't have my glasses on. Sometimes, no, that's the evolution of a conversation. Right? If we were all in an arena and I'm up on stage talking and people are asking questions and I said, this is the topic we're going to talk about tonight, that is just a guideline, like the Pirate Codex, more of a guideline really than a law, because that is the topic that I want to start with. But the truth is, any person who's a spiritual leader in any way that's actually trying to help people ascend is not going to stifle people and keep them and hold them on one point. Producers get crazy when you don't stay on the point they want you on because they're in the physical, right? Producers get nuts about that. Stay on point, stay on topic, because they're selling a topic and they're dependent. Their life depends on each individual show being a certain topic so that you come back for the next show. Just like when they go to a commercial break, they hit you with something, a hook to make sure you come back from the commercial break to see what just happened. That's why they do that. Same thing with topics. They want you to stay on one particular topic so they can sell tickets to it. They can sell it later on the internet, and they can chop it up and put it out there. And you have to stay focused on what they want you on, because you can talk about that, but we're going to do a whole show on that because we want to sell tickets to that too and pack the auditorium. They're driven by money and power and fame. And so therefore, some people are linear that way. They become great producers. Right, for the cabal, because they hold everybody on a certain track. We can't talk about anything besides that. I had people in Ancient Aliens Worldwide, the group that I created in 2012. They got annoyed if we were talking about UFOs, and I'm like, so what you're saying is that we're only supposed to talk about aliens here, but we can't talk about the car they used to get here, to drive here. What? That's like saying I want to talk about the Indianapolis 500, but I don't want to talk about the drivers of the cars. We're only going to talk about the cars, or the other way around. I'm going to talk about the NASCAR, but we're only talking about the car drivers. They're nothing without the car. They're racing a car. Their ability to get in a car that's almost identical to another car and outrun everyone else and jockey for a position to win the race is the chess game of that entire endeavor. So you can't talk about, that'd be like saying I want to talk about the Indianapolis 500, but I don't want anybody to drive over 55 miles an hour. The Indianapolis 500 is about going as fast as you can to get 500 miles before anybody else. So you can't say we're not going to talk about speed. How can you talk about aliens and not talk about their technology of how they got here? Do you see? Some people are very linear, and that offends them when you get off topic in a way that they don't think applies to what you're talking about. People get very annoyed when I talk in parables if they don't understand that I'm talking in a parable right now. And they're like, what does this have to do with what we were talking about before? Just because you don't understand what I'm saying and think that I'm not talking about what I was talking about before doesn't mean I am not. And I do that on purpose. Most people who know what they're doing when they're talking and speaking in front of people will use 4 to 7 parables about the same subject, because everybody learns a different way. So just because you don't know where that goes, like me talking about language, right? And if you're laughing, and I'm not accusing you of being linear, what I'm saying is that you're like, man, sometimes we get way off topic. When you see that and you think we're way off topic, truthfully, if you really pay attention, you'll realize that I'm just using that reference. I'm using language because somebody brought it up, and I was able to see that how I could use the talking about language and learning to speak different languages and the differences of those languages regionally, and how I could tie that into what Ra was talking about the potentiation of learning and the ascension. And I did. But if you didn't get that, it's not wrong that you didn't get it. If you didn't, and that's why you said what you said about how sometimes we get off topic. I'm not actually rambling. I'm utilizing something that somebody brought up in a way that's going to pull it back around. I don't always show that and say, do you see how I got back here? I don't always say that. But I'm not rambling off on a subject that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, because learning language and being aware of the barriers of language and the differences in languages and what they represent and why and how and by who has everything to do with what we're talking about in the Law of One, and your internal struggle and your external struggle, because it does everything. And your perception of your reality, including the words that you speak, count and mean something, right? So for me to tie that back in, let me do that for you in case you didn't see that. Learning that this language is designed to keep you in a low vibration, which is what I talked about, and that other languages have a higher vibration and are easier. If you didn't learn this language first, you're aware of that. Which who was it that was saying that? Was that Joanne that was talking? I don't remember. Don't get me out of me if I used the wrong name. I think it was Joanne that was talking about that. How hard English is coming from a place of non-English first. Those of us who are aware of that in English realize it's easier to learn other languages than it is this one, right? It's hard. This language is hard even for us, right? So the point of all of that is perception. You knowing that, being aware that the language you speak, the thoughts in your head affect you in a vibration that can affect your life. Living in a square domicile. It was called a domicile because it was a dome. Okay, domicile means a room or a place that you live, a dwelling. The word dwelling and domicile. Do you notice the same sound that is a dome? Domicile, dwelling. We don't live that. They've put us in boxes that are square because that is the lowest vibrational energy of a dwelling to put you in, to keep your energy low. This language is the lowest language on the face of this earth currently that can keep you at a low energy. So they want more people speaking it. That's why they're trying to push this language along to other people. That was my point of getting off onto that tangent. So truly becoming aware of language and dialect and your living quarters and its actual shape was done to you on purpose and is being done to you on purpose because it was part of what was the knowledge in the little handbag that the Anunnaki brought here and the scrolls they're wearing in their little waist. All of this actually matters. We're aware of that. They are too. 99% of the population of this earth has no idea and are oblivious to it. So we weren't actually just rambling on. Sometimes it seems like we might be, and I talk like we are because if I don't and I stay very structured and school-like and professor-like, a lot of you are going to get bored and go, fuck, this guy's too tight. This guy's too tightly wound. He's just like a guy yelling at us about stuff or he's just, very strict. You see my point? So I have to come up with ways of entertaining and allowing the conversation to flow. Why? Because when I do that, conversation gets into your head better than if I'm taking on the role of a teacher or some sort of person who's trying to instruct you. I'm aware of that. I took classes. I literally was in a college to learn this. Okay. My brother's doing it now and learning this. This is something that we learn. So it appears to some people at different points, just like when Cassie was like, okay, let's get on Raw. I'm not saying that I didn't, because she said, Leo told me that. I did. I told her, if I seem like I'm getting too far, remind me. And so she was doing what I told her to do. You didn't know that. And you were like, hey, leave Leo alone. And she was like, no, he told me to do that. I did. And I had already, at my own, not knowing that, which is hilarious, I would give her credit if I hadn't and I looked down. But I'm sure that subconsciously it was a communication. She was like typing it. And I was like, I need to get back on point. And then I looked at the screen and went bloop. And she said that. I laughed. Because we both thought it at the same time. I had stayed off topic just enough. I hadn't, 40 minutes of not actually playing Raw. Some people would run away. And I came here to listen to Raw. If you only want to listen to Raw, you can do it without me. You can read the books for yourself, or you can listen to the audio. You don't need me. I'm not here for just to play Raw and sit here, because that's already out there. You don't need me to do that. So if you don't need me to do that, go and do that. Go away and do that. Not you, Rick, but people who think that. So sometimes it seems like I'm moving on to something that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But if you pay attention, I will pull it back around. That's why I went that way. I go off because somebody said something about it, or I did. And then I show you how that, and if you don't catch that, it's okay, because not everybody is going to catch every parable. It's rare. And that usually bothers the people who catch every parable. They're like, oh, he's repeating himself. It's the third time he's said this. Right? Until you get to the point where you go, okay, because then you're going to go, I don't really need to be here. Ray does that a lot. She's like, this is basic. And I'm like, yeah, for you. It's hard for some people to sit through listening to me if they realize I'm talking and I'm telling the same story now a different way. And I'm doing it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. People who are aware of all of those don't need me, because they're already doing it themselves. So they're not going to tune into my show and my class, because that would be like a class full of professors, right? You get a professor teaching a class full of professors. They're all going to be like, I'm a professor already. I don't need to be taught how to be a professor. But some of them are going to be there going, well, what is it? Maybe this guy knows something I don't know. And they'll sit through it. Do you see my point? So some are going to put up with it, but the ones that are linear are going to go, I don't need this guy. Why am I sitting here wasting my time? I could be doing something else to better the world. And they're going to be going, yeah, what he's saying is great. Everybody should listen to this man, but I'm going to take off, right? I'm okay with that. That's my point, right? So when it gets like this, you just have to realize, unless I really don't make any sense and everybody goes, what does this have to do? If everyone does that, then I'll be like, okay, I fucked up and didn't explain that right, because no one got it, the reference, right? I love you too, Rick. So truly, that is the way conversation is supposed to be anyways. It's supposed to evolve, and that's how we all will learn better, because you become more comfortable and you'll say things that you wouldn't say in a setting. If I was very strict and didn't listen to anybody and just listen to what I have to say, what are you going to learn from me? You're only going to learn what I'm telling you. You're not going to learn what you want, because you learn differently. And so you have to be able to ask questions, and we have to be able to evolve the conversation into a different parable. So somebody has to be able to ask questions so that I can see what you need clarification on. Because you only ask the question of what you want clarification on, or what you don't know about. If I don't let you voice that, then you'll never learn anything, and I'll never learn anything either, because I don't know what people are asking. And so I can't evolve as well. Do you see my point? So that's how it's supposed to work. So I always say that, because the truth is, if I go somewhere and somebody's completely linear, I'm like, oh, they're going to lose so many people, because they're not letting people ask questions to answer them. Some people just are linear that way. And I'm going to give a dissertation and everybody just shut up. We'll take questions at the end. And then there's always more questions than they can ever get to. And I always feel bad for those people who never get the question answered. I try to make sure we get those guys in. And that whatever question you have, whatever comment that you have, I try to look at and try to see if I need to respond in some way, or if you guys are talking amongst yourselves and don't need me. Right. And so when that happens, I don't care either. I don't get annoyed. Some people get annoyed and go, hey, come on, guys, listen to me. Stop talking amongst yourselves. Right. No, No, only people who are egoic are going to get mad. So when you're in a school, most of the time your teachers are going to be that way. They're going to be pissed off. They don't want you talking to each other and passing notes. Your job is to shut up and listen to me right here because I'm being paid to teach you a certain thing. And if I don't teach you these things, they'll fire me. So because of the curriculum that they have there, that person is forced to be that way. And then what they end up getting is people that are love that doing that because they're egoic. And that's why they do it. They want to be important and have people, but some people are trying to help people as well. You'll find that there's a difference in the classes, and they always show those on comedies where the person's being funny, trying to teach people, and you have the whatever student council or the principal of the school or whatever you call the headmaster of the school getting mad at that person because they're outside the curriculum and teaching in a way. And that person's like, I'm just trying to help them learn. You see that where people dress up in the costumes of the people and they're trying to act like a little stage show to show them what's going on. And you have people get mad. And you're like, but that helps them. The visuals help these people get into realizing who these people were and how they acted and dressed and all of that. No, that's not what we're here teaching you to do. You're just supposed to be saying what we're telling you to say. Why? Because they're trying to control the narrative and keep you only learn a certain thing. Okay, I got to go because it's time for dinner, right? Did I miss a question that's in here, right? Home study is good too. Yes, it is, right? The in-depth, schooling is better but in this country, I don't know how it is in all countries. In this country, if you're going to homeschool, you actually have to prove that you're teaching your child properly, or at least teaching them. For them, you don't just get to pull your kids out of school. They want to make sure here that you're not just pulling your kids out of school and not teaching them anything. But homeschooling, that's what we did with my stepson. We took him out of public school because I realized 20 years ago what was happening, which is people are just now waking up to in the world about this agenda that's being taught. I realized that 20 years ago, more than that actually, but 20 years ago was when he was in school, and we pulled him out of public school and had his grandfather homeschool him. His grandfather had to create his own home school that he could have hired anybody to come to and teach, but he didn't. He just was teaching his grandson. And then we, had him in sports and stuff. So he was still interacting with people and learned how to socialize with other children, and then put him back into public school to graduate with a public class for the last year of his, maybe 2 years. But he had already learned everything he needed to learn prior to, and he was in school and he was kind of bored, but he understood what was going on and how different it was. But he was there with people and got to graduate with people in a normal way. But he was far more advanced than the kids from his regular school, the public school. And then when he went on to college and realized, hey, college is kind of the same, but it's almost go at your own pace, he was able to excel there. But he also realized that they were still had the same curriculum, trying to dumb everything down. So he ended up doing what I ended up doing as well, and teaching things on their own. So home education and learning things, home studies, Troy, absolutely are essential. You should be doing that on your own and learning more on your own. They tried to stifle me when I was in school, and I would be like, I'm taking the book home. Can I just do the whole book ahead of time? And the teachers were like, absolutely not. Don't you dare, because you're going to get it all wrong. And I was like, oh, okay. All right, I won't, I swear. And whenever they would ask me, I'd be like, no, I'm only doing what you're told. And I did the entire freaking book before the first quarter of the year was over, and was then, on to other things and going to libraries and learning stuff because on my own. And pretending, going to school, going through the motions and pretending that I didn't know, and waited for the kids who didn't get it and that weren't doing any work other than what they had to do and their homework the day, 5 minutes before class because they didn't want to get in trouble, and sat in school because I was supposed to. But I learned far more on my own when I was out of school than I ever did in school. And it continued that way. Even when I went to college, I was like, college is no different than high school, which is no different than grammar school. So my education was me going out into the world and learning it by finding the books and reading it and finding history and reading it and studying on my own. And then going to their prerequisite classes and sitting in there and waiting for everybody to catch up. And the only person that ever noticed that was the monk who was teaching Philosophy 101. And after about 5 days of being in class, he took me aside and said, okay, you either don't get this at all, or you should be teaching me. Explain to me the idea of philosophy and what's going on. And I explained to him, and he said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Because this is a prerequisite. I have to take this first before I can take any other philosophical thought." He said, "You don't need to be here. In fact, you should probably be teaching this class." He's like, "Where'd you learn that?" And I'm like, "From the libraries, from history, from classic learning. I went and learned about the books that all the philosophers that you're going to be teaching about, all the philosophical thought from around the world that I could find. I bought all the books and read them all. By the time I was 18, I already knew all this, already read it all. There's nothing on this earth that I haven't already read that has to do with philosophical thought, unless it's somebody creating something new or contemporary." By the time I was in Philosophy 101, and he's like, "I'm going to give you a passing grade today. If you want to sit in, you can, but you don't have to." And I was like, "Okay." My math teacher fought me on that, and then I was never asked for it, but my math teacher fought me on that until I proved that her book was wrong, that my question that she marked wrong was right. She said, "I got the answer book right here." I said, "Your answer book is wrong. Do the actual math the way you were complaining that I wasn't doing it on the calculator. Do the math and check that book." She did, and she was like, "Oh my God, this book is wrong." I'm like, "I know." And they won't fix it. You'll tell somebody and they'll ignore it because they'll have to pull all these books off the shelf and republish all new books. Whoever screwed that up is going to get away with it. And every child in America is getting that answer wrong everywhere, every day. And that answer is wrong because somebody typed it wrong or did it wrong before. And she got mad at me because I was questioning that until she figured out that I was right. And then everybody was like, "Whoa," and they applauded me. And I was like, "I'm not arrogant about it. I just know that what I know. That was wrong. That answer is wrong. My answer is right." Not, so was I Sheldon? Yeah. Before we knew what Sheldon was, I was Sheldon. But I wasn't a dick. There was a time when I was young. But I got out of that way before. I was more like Leonard, but not a completely like he was neurotic. I was never neurotic like that. but Leonard, my name is Leonard. I was more like Kutrapali with Leonard's humility, right? But with the brain of what's his name? You know what I mean? More like I'm kind of like if you put all of them together, that was more what I was. But I was pieces of all of them. That's why that was a genius comedy show, because anybody who actually has a brain knows that you are one of those characters. And the smartest person was Penny. She was smarter than any one of them. She had a higher IQ than them, but she just wasn't a nerd in mathematics and trying to be a scientist. And they didn't realize that until they started doing Trivia Pursuit with her and realized how smart she was. And she was more wise. That was the beauty of the writing of that. Everybody thinks she's this dumb blonde. She's actually more wise than every character in that entire show. You see that quickly with her and Leonard's character being the mom and dad to Sheldon. And you realize how childlike Sheldon was, even though he's so smart. They had to actually act like they were his mom and dad. It became a joke with them, but it was true. And they knew it was a truism that they had to raise him like a child and treat him like a child, even though he had this beautiful brain. Great, one of the funniest comedies ever written. That's why it was on the air for 150 years. Okay, I gotta go. I'll see you guys later. I gotta cook some dinner. I love you guys. I believe Jacqueline's doing her show. I haven't talked to her. She said there's going to be changes because we are making changes going in 2024. I don't know if Jacqueline Taylor's going to be on the air tomorrow. If so, we'll be on the air at noon tomorrow. So I don't know if she's going to do this show tomorrow or not. I'll find out either later on today or tomorrow. So you may see us on Jacqueline Taylor's show. I might be on there. If she's going to be on, I'll be on there tomorrow. If not, I'll see you guys next Friday. But there are going to be changes, and we're going to roll that stuff out too. And you'll hear about that as time goes with everything that's going on as we start ramping up. We're moving to the next phase of the global ambassadors of light that we're going to be you'll be hearing more about, and that will start becoming more prevalent in 2024. As we get all of those pieces together, you'll start seeing that. So, but I don't know how soon Jacqueline is going to change the format of her weekend with Jack. So we'll either see you tomorrow. I'll either see you tomorrow on that, or I will see you guys next Friday. Okay. All right. I love you guys. Have a great night. This has been Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. I'll see you guys later.